Chapter 602. And Lin stared at the lightning sword in his chest with incredulity on his face. The lightning sword was imbued with peerless sharpness, and devastating lightning might spread throughout his entire body as destructive power proliferated outward. Did his lightning manipulation technique fail? No. It should be said that he didn't react in time. No matter where the divine lightning of tribulation lightning was drawn to, it would always be directed toward the person transcending the tribulation. However, right when the lightning sword was drawn toward the 91st level, it suddenly changed its target and stabbed toward Lin. Everything had happened far too quickly, and Lin was caught off guard and fell prey to the attack. Why did it strike me instead of Lu Qianhuan? It's not like I'm the one transcending the tribulation. Lin was completely dumbstruck. Could it be that the divine lightning felt like its dignity had been challenged by his constant use of the lightning manipulation technique and decided to attack him? That didn't make any sense. If the divine lightning really was this emotional, he would have been struck countless times already. Lin. Su Xiaolan let loose a cry of surprise at the sight of Lin being struck by the lightning sword before immediately flying toward him. Su Qianyuan followed closely behind Su Xiaolan. Even Xianyuan Cheng and Tang Shiman's expressions shifted drastically as they flew toward Lin. "Don't come any closer. I'm fine, get away from me." Lin yelled in a loud voice. Everyone faltered upon hearing this. Only then did they notice that even though the lightning sword had punctured Lin's skin, there didn't seem to be any serious injuries aside from a hole in his clothes and some charred skin. "Hey, are you really fine?" Su Xiaolan was a little concerned. "I'm fine." Lin shook his head. "Aside from a little numbness, I'm really fine." He extended his hands and crushed the lightning sword in his chest as he spoke. Gasp! Everyone drew a sharp intake of breath upon seeing this. He could even withstand tribulation lightning for someone else without getting injured. How terrifying! Lu Qianhuan turned to look at Lin, and a hint of emotion flashed through her indifferent eyes. She began to understand why the Thunder Trial had turned to Lin. It had used the sword to violently cut off all obsessions, not only about her mother, but also about Lin and the others. In particular, when Lin was standing right before her, the lightning tribulation sword was even more severely affected by his presence. The lightning tribulation was the key to breaking through to the next realm. Naturally, it would eliminate all obstacles that would affect the breakthrough. What to do? Lu Qianhuan suddenly discovered that it wasn't that easy to part with these things. She still couldn't forget her mother. She couldn't forget Lin and her friends, perhaps. When the last bolt of lightning fell, she would be able to sever all her obsessions with the power of the heavenly tribulation. But for some reason, she was afraid. When she really had to face it, she had the thought of retreating. Rumble. The 42nd lightning bolt fell. The lightning sword lit up the sky. This time, Lin was completely focused on using the lightning manipulation technique and didn't slack off in the slightest. The lightning sword was guided around the top of the pagoda. Sure enough, when it got close to him, the lightning sword suddenly changed direction and stabbed at him. Lin was already prepared, and he immediately adjusted his direction. Whoosh! The lightning sword was forcibly guided toward Lu Qianhuan. Lu Qianhuan was in the middle of activating her sword mantra, and the projection of an ancient sword enshrouded her entire body. The lightning sword crashed in her body and transformed into countless tiny arcs of lightning. The sword intent imbued with the heavenly Tao flowed through her body, bringing with it not only destruction, but also creation. Success. A gratified smile appeared on Lin's face. During a tribulation transcendence, absorbing the power of tribulation lightning was the most important step. Only by being reborn from destruction could one step onto the peerless Tao. If it weren't for this, Lin would have blocked all of the tribulation lightning for Lu Qianhuan a long time ago. Boom, boom, boom. Bolts of lightning fell one after another, and Lu Qianhuan's aura became more and more powerful. Following the awakening of her ancient sword Tao physique, her sword intent became boundlessly sharp and pierced through the heavens. Some of the students with lower cultivation bases felt their Tao hearts waver at the sight of this sword intent soaring into the sky. They even felt the urge to kneel down and worship her. After the 48th bolt of tribulation lightning fell, the rumbling of thunder in the sky had already died down. Enlin looked up at the sky with a solemn and expectant expression. This was the last bolt of tribulation lightning. An extremely terrifying power was accumulating, and the boundless sword intent tore the clouds in the sky in half. A white lightning sword tore through the heavens and descended upon the world. The lightning sword was over 100 feet long, and it was extremely dazzling, bathing the entire heaven and earth in a vast expanse of white. The energy imbued within the sword was extremely terrifying, and everyone felt a suffocating sense of oppression. Crack, crack. The space around the lightning sword seemed to be unable to withstand such terrifying power, and black cracks began to appear. This tribulation lightning is so powerful. And Lin stared up at the lightning sword in the sky with astonishment on his face. Even his body of the war god would most likely be wounded by this lightning strike, and Lu Qianhuan might not be able to withstand it. No, she definitely wouldn't be able to withstand it. Furthermore, for some reason, using the lightning manipulation technique to control Lu Qianhuan's tribulation lightning wasn't as easy as controlling his own tribulation lightning. He could only control its direction, but he couldn't control its speed or its explosive power. This meant that its power would instantly engulf Lu Qianhuan. Kong Mohan also realized this, and his expression shifted drastically. No, the power of this tribulation lightning is far too terrifying. She won't be able to withstand it. Is it because the immortal spirit tower was able to withstand the tribulation lightning? Baizhong's expression was filled with disappointment, but he didn't know what to do. In the distance, the celestial arch also shook his head and heaved a forlorn sigh. It's not just because of the immortal spirit tower. The more supremely talented a being is, the more terrifying their tribulation lightning will be. Lu Qianhuan has awakened her ancient sword Dao physique, and her aptitude is astonishing, so it's only natural that her tribulation lightning would be terrifying. However, her foundation has yet to be perfected, and she is yet to completely let go of her obsession. Now that she's trying to use the power of the tribulation lightning to sever her obsession, this will only make the tribulation lightning even more fearsome. She's most likely going to die here. The celestial arch shook his head and sighed. If this were the initial stage of the tribulation lightning, he could still forcibly disperse the tribulation clouds and save Lu Qianhuan's life. However, the tribulation lightning had already reached its final stage, and even he couldn't interfere. Otherwise, he would suffer backlash from the heavenly Tao. Everyone else also wore nervous expressions on their faces. No matter how inexperienced they were all well aware of just how terrifying this tribulation lightning was. It didn't seem to be something that a human could withstand. Lu Qianhuan's features turned deathly pale as she sensed the terrifying power of the tribulation lightning. She thought back to her past. She loved her mother so much, and she had so many friends that she cherished, so why did she have to sever all of these emotions? One wrong step led to many wrong steps. Lu Qianhuan realized where she had gone wrong. She wasn't prepared to sever all of these emotions. She wasn't even prepared for this. So how could the tribulation lightning help her? Gale force winds howled as dark clouds surged. A white lightning sword hung high in the sky. Lu Qianhuan's body was no longer tall and straight. Instead, she was like a willow branch that was about to fall over. Two streams of tears flowed down her beautiful cheeks, but she was completely unaware of them. She knew that she could also fear death, and she could also feel regret and reluctance. Boom! The white lightning sword was like a divine punishment as it descended from the heavens, creating the most dazzling light between heaven and earth. Lu Qianhuan raised her head to look out the window to find a terrifying energy approaching through the air. Her purple eyes were a little dull, but she caught sight of a man smiling at her with a determined and warm expression on his face. The lightning sword fell, but it pierced through the man's chest. Lu Qianhuan's lips parted slightly. In the end, she was unable to repress her emotions any longer, and an urgent cry escaped her lips. Lin, Chapter 603. A dazzling white lightning sword imbued with boundless sword intent and the power to destroy space punctured Lin's body. This was the only way that Lin could think of to ensure Lu Qianhuan's survival. Previously, a bolt of tribulation lightning had struck his body before being pulverized by him. Thus, he could do the same thing this time and shift the target of the tribulation lightning to himself. It was quite clear that he had succeeded. The white lightning sword had successfully punctured his body, and the destructive power charred Lin's chest black as he threw up a mouthful of blood. Lin, Lu Qianhuan yelled. She tried to approach Lin, but to her surprise, a burst of mighty power of heaven and earth suddenly descended upon her. Lu Qianhuan felt as if the paramount power had struck her body, and her body was instantly severely wounded as she threw up a mouthful of blood. Don't worry about me. I'm fine. Lin took a deep breath, and the power of his body of the war god was completely activated as his powerful body resisted and digested the terrifying lightning sword. At the same time, a burst of pure yang power imbued with peerless sword intent began to slowly flow into Lin's sea of vital energy due to the suppression of his body of the war god. And Kirin raised his head to look up into the sky to find that white lightning had filled the entire sea of vital energy. Even the white vermilion bird had fled in fear. However, he fearlessly leaped into the air and opened his mouth with excitement as he pounced toward the boundless white lightning in his sea of vital energy. Clatter, clatter, and Kirin devoured the power of the white lightning sword to his heart's content within Lin's sea of vital energy. At the same time, the massive lightning sword embedded in Lin's chest began to shrink, and its power also began to wane. In the end, it was unable to hold on any longer and began to disintegrate into countless bolts of white lightning that enshrouded Lin's entire body. Bai Zhong, Kong Mohan, Lu Qianhuan, and the thousands of students were all dumbstruck. Even the celestial Arch swallowed involuntarily. They saw an expression of bliss on Lin's face. That's right. Other than the painful expression on his face when he was struck by the sword, when he recovered and absorbed the power of the heavenly lightning, Lin began to narrow his eyes. His body trembled slightly, and the corners of his mouth curled up faintly. He actually revealed a happy smile. Isn't Lin enjoying himself? I think so. Could it be that you can laugh when you're in pain? I will. Hey, bro, you seem to have exposed something. As expected of the tamer of divine lightning, only a man as ferocious as him would be able to manipulate and control divine lightning and reap bliss from its attacks. Does it feel good to be struck by lightning? I want to try too. The students looked at the man in the sky with awe and fanaticism. This scene would probably become one of the most profound memories of their school life. When Su Xiaolan saw this, she looked at Lin with a complicated expression. She thought to herself, is he into this kind of thing? The dark clouds in the sky slowly dissipated, and a bright and beautiful light shone down from above, giving everyone a sense of relief. Lin had also completely dispelled the lightning sword, and a white lightning cloak appeared around in Kirin's body. A powerful sword intent surged through the air, and the little whale trembled uncontrollably in fear. Huh, what the hell is a cloak? Could it be that a cloak was equivalent to a set of clothes? Lin was ecstatic upon seeing this. His condition for progressing to the soul formation final stage was to give Kirin a set of clothes. So a cloak counted as a set of clothes, right? He looked toward his system with an impatient expression, only to find that the system was completely dark and did not indicate that the mission had been completed. Lin was quite disappointed. That didn't count. Boom! His sea of vital energy suddenly tremored. Immediately afterward, Kirin gave him some kind of feedback that improved his understanding of the Tao of Lightning. This feedback was related to the sword intent of lightning. To put it in simpler terms, he could now use the power of that white lightning sword. A smile blossomed on Lu Qianhuan's face upon seeing that Enlin was safe and sound. Her bright purple eyes regained their usual luster, making her appear even more alluring. Gotcha! A crisp sound rang out. A crack suddenly appeared on the ancient sword's silhouette that enveloped her. PFFF. Lu Qianhuan spat out a mouthful of blood. Enlin's expression changed as he yelled, Lu Qianhuan, are you all right? Kong Mohan, who was also a top-rate sword cultivator, seemed to have thought of something upon seeing Lu Qianhuan's state, and a grave expression appeared on his face. Crap! Her thunder tribulations were few, and her sword Dao insight had not been tempered by the thunder tribulations, so it was lacking. In other words, if she's unable to take advantage of this lightning tribulation to polish her sword Dao to perfection, then it'll be very difficult for her cultivation to improve in the future. Everyone's expression changed when they heard this. They raised their heads and looked at the sky. The dark clouds had already dispersed. Where was the lightning tribulation? Could it be that this tribulation was destined to be a pity? Lu Qianhuan's expression was poignant, and the 2 tear stains on her face evoked a sense of pity in everyone's hearts. However, a carefree smile appeared on her face upon hearing Kong Mohan's words, and she replied in a cheerful voice, It's all right. It's already a blessing that I'm still alive. I've already refined my soul formation stage body, and I still have over 10,000 years of lifespan left. What's there to be afraid of? Gotcha! Countless cracks appeared on the ancient sword's silhouette, and its bronze glow gradually dimmed. The once peerless sword intent was like a castle in the air, on the verge of collapse at any moment. Everyone felt their hearts wrench in their throats upon seeing this, and some of them couldn't even bear to watch. Enlin clenched his fists with an expression of indignation on his face. He suddenly seemed to have thought of something, and he took a deep breath before making another motion with his finger. Gotcha! White lightning appeared in the air once again, and it was imbued with boundless sword intent. This was a sense of déjà vu. Lu Qianhuan turned toward Enlin, and she was completely rooted to the spot. Not only her, but everyone also turned to look at Enlin with shock, confusion, and excitement in their eyes. Are you willing to trust me? Enlin asked. Lu Qianhuan nodded with a dainty smile. Yes, then why don't we give it a try? Enlin waved a hand, and white lightning materialized into a lightning sword from which supreme sword intent surged forth. All right, I'll do as you say. Lu Qianhuan didn't know why, but she had absolute trust in the man before her. It was as if this man was worthy of her trust, and this gave her a peculiar sense of security. Boom! The white lightning sword stabbed toward Lu Qianhuan. Lu Qianhuan activated her cultivation technique, and the sword intent around her body surged again. Boom! Lightning exploded, and the cracks on the ancient sword's silhouette began to slowly mend. Everyone's heart jolted, and they almost yelled in excitement. It worked. The power that Enlin had unleashed this time came from Lu Qianhuan's heavenly tribulation, so the power of this lightning sword was extremely compatible with Lu Qianhuan. The fact that it could unleash the same effect as the tribulation lightning was quite surprising. But it's not enough. Enlin manipulated lightning again, and another white lightning sword stabbed toward Lu Qianhuan. Boom, boom, boom. Bolts of lightning exploded, and Lu Qianhuan's sword intent was gradually perfected. In the end, Lu Qianhuan's sword intent soared into the heavens before everyone's eyes. A sword intent that seemed to have come from a great transcendence resonated with all the swords in the world. This time, it wasn't submission. Instead, it was the power of all the swords to follow Lu Qianhuan. Lu Qianhuan stepped lightly, and with each step, she stepped onto an extremely tiny projection of a celestial sword. Her body became a sword. Everything became a sword. Heaven and earth became a sword. The air she stepped on could also become a sword. Kong Mohan's body trembled with excitement. A true peerless sword immortal has finally been born. Lu Qianhuan stepped through the air and arrived before Enlin. The sharpness in her purple eyes had completely faded, and only her beautiful eyes remained. A light breeze blew past, and her long hair danced in the wind, tugging at one's heartstrings. Thank you, Enlin. Senior sister will reward you with a hug. She didn't wait for Enlin to speak before giving him a teasing smile. She then walked over to him and embraced him tightly. Enlin felt a fragrant scent waft past him, immediately following which a warm and soft body was pressed into his arms. He stood rooted to the spot, but he could still feel the scorching heat from her body, as well as the hands that were wrapped tightly around his back. The man who had once needed her protection was now someone she could rely on. Lu Qianhuan closed her eyes and savored the sensation for a while before slowly releasing her arms and taking a few steps back. She looked at the still, dazed Enlin and tilted her head to the side with a faint smile. Her smile was exquisitely beautiful, and it was tinged with the pride of a sword immortal as well as a hint of intimacy and charm. She spoke again. Thank you. Enlin came to his senses and waved his hands. No need to thank me. It's what I should do. Nearby, Su Xiaolan's lips twitched imperceptibly. Chapter 604. Lu Qianhuan had finally transcended her tribulation, and all of the spectators heaved a collective sigh of relief. This type of tribulation transcendence had stimulated their adrenal glands, and the excitement and satisfaction it brought them was no less than watching a spectacular battle. As for the hug at the end, no one thought much of it. Su Xiaolan felt a little strange upon seeing this. She really wanted to grab Enlin and give him a good beating. She really wanted to ask him if he had a good time hugging her. However, after thinking about it for a moment, she realized that it wouldn't be very appropriate for her to do something like that in front of everyone. So she repressed the urge to give Enlin a good beating. Classmate Enlin is so awesome. He can even execute tribulation lightning on behalf of the heavens. Does that mean I can also get Enlin to strike me with tribulation lightning, thereby allowing me to progress to the soul formation initial stage? Su Qianyun blinked her dreamy eyes as her imagination ran wild. Su Xiaolan replied with a resigned expression. That clearly won't work. Enlin must have absorbed a portion of Lu Qianhuan's tribulation lightning, and that's why he's able to send his tribulation lightning back to Lu Qianhuan. But who knows? What if his tribulation lightning works? How will we know if we don't try? Su Qianyun spoke in a mellow voice, but her expression was one of stubbornness. Su Xiaolan slapped a hand to her forehead and heaved a faint sigh. If this little girl insisted on being struck by tribulation lightning, then she couldn't do anything about it. Zhong wiped the cold sweat from his forehead. This tribulation transcendence had given him a huge fright. One of the most talented students in the school had almost perished here. I almost made a huge mistake. Kong Mohan was the happiest person to see Lu Qianhuan transcend her tribulation safely. He was afraid that his reckless persuasion would result in the death of a supremely talented sword immortal. Thankfully, a man turned the tables and saved Lu Qianhuan. In any case, the final result was a positive one. A gratified smile appeared on Bai Zhong's face. This trial has come to a successful conclusion, he faltered as he spoke. Wait, what the F***CK, is this over? All of the trial takers had run out of the pagoda, and it was a complete mess. All of a sudden, Bai Zhong felt extremely stifled and exhausted. Lu Qianhuan raised her slender eyebrows at Enlin. Then, she turned and walked toward the 91st level. She waved her slender hand in the air and said in a sweet voice, "Let's go, the trial isn't over yet." She made her way into the 91-level Immortal Spirit Tower as she spoke. Bai Zhong also played his role as the manager of the restricted area at this moment. All trial takers, please return to your original floors. The trial will continue. Enlin looked behind him and found that Su Xiaolan was also looking at him. A faint smile appeared on Su Xiaolan's face. Well done. Of course. Have you been conquered by my powerful and imposing figure? After being praised, Enlin couldn't help but gloat. Su Xiaolan's heart sank. Was this person really that insensitive? She couldn't help but sneer. Ha! Just you wait when we get back. Ha! Enlin was dumbstruck, and a sense of foreboding welled up in his heart. All right, time for the trial. Su Xiaolan flew toward the 95th level atop her dragon sparrow sword with a disinterested expression. Classmate and Lin, you have to help me transcend my tribulation in the future. Su Qinyan also waved goodbye with a sweet smile on her face. Help her transcend her tribulation? And Lin was a little dumbstruck, but they had already flown away, so he could only set this aside for now. He swallowed a blood spirit pill to replenish his energy before flying toward the 98th level. Speaking of which, his divine intent on that level took a very long time to materialize. He had waited for a long time, but still hadn't materialized into a human form, so he didn't know if it had already materialized. As expected, the more badass a person was, the slower they would take to make an appearance. On the 91st level, Kong Mohan and Lu Qianhuan stood with their swords in their hands. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have tried to persuade you to sever your obsession to make a breakthrough. Kong Mohan bowed with an apologetic expression. A dainty smile appeared on Lu Qianhuan's face. No, that was my fault. However, I'm very glad that I made the choice I made. After all, the outcome was very good, wasn't it? This was a very good outcome. In the past, she had to sever her obsession in order to make a breakthrough, only to find that she was completely unable to do so. It was exactly because of Lin's appearance that she was able to successfully make a breakthrough without giving up anything that was very precious to her. Perhaps her Tao heart would still be affected by her emotions, but it was still much better than a cold and emotionless sword immortal. Kong Mohan nodded with a relieved smile at the sight of Lu Qianhuan's powerful sword intent. Then let's begin. All right. Lu Qianhuan waved her frosty long sword through the air, and a colorless domain of extreme frost instantly proliferated outward. Her body was like an unsheathed, treasured sword, and the blue silk around her was like clouds and mist as it revolved around her delicate body. The terrifying sword intent emanating from her body caused the entire space around her to tremor uncontrollably. The vacuum extended all the way to Kong Mohan's body, and heaven and earth had already parted for her sword before it had even descended. Kong Mohan's pupils contracted upon seeing this, and he forcibly broke free from the domain of extreme frost before slashing a green sword projection toward Lu Qianhuan. Clang! A sound similar to jade colliding resounded. His green sword radiance was sliced in half by a blue afterimage. So fast, Kong Mohan hurriedly unleashed a movement technique to retreat at the sight of a figure charging toward him, only to find that his speed was becoming slower and slower, while the figure in front of him was becoming faster and faster. Domain of extreme frost. The closer the distance, the more powerful the spatial freezing power became. Whoosh! The sword projection descended with absolute frost sword intent, slicing Kong Mohan's body in half. Lu Qianhuan had already appeared behind Kong Mohan, and her blue and pink sailor dress fluttered in the wind as snowflakes danced in the air. She lowered her snowy white arm before twisting her wrist, and the frosty long sword in her hand transformed into a puddle of water that fell to the ground. She didn't even have to look at Kong Mohan behind her. How impressive! A gratified smile appeared on Kong Mohan's face as his body began to dissipate. I'm going to teach you the dripping sword technique now. Take this. A speck of green light fell into Lu Qianhuan's glabella. Lu Qianhuan stood silently. She possessed the ancient sword Tao physique, so she was able to quickly comprehend the true intent of the dripping sword technique. She bowed gratefully to Kong Mohan. Thank you, Senior. A satisfied smile appeared on Kong Mohan's face. It's your astonishing aptitude that makes me want to teach you everything I know. His body slowly dissipated, and his voice also became more and more feeble. In the end, he drifted away like a gust of wind. Bai Zhong appeared, and he looked at Lu Qianhuan with a forlorn expression before bringing out a bunch of badges. Lu Qianhuan, congratulations on passing the trial. You can choose another level now. Lu Qianhuan didn't even hesitate before picking up the number 97 badge. Bai Zhong faltered slightly upon seeing this. You've only just progressed to the soul formation initial stage. Why don't you reconsider? No matter how supremely talented you are, you still need time to improve. If you choose number 97, you really won't stand a chance. Heh, old man, you didn't even have a chance against me on the 91st level. Lu Qianhuan chuckled. Bai Zhong was struck by another indescribable sense of frustration. All right. Go ahead then. You won't be able to grow if you don't suffer some setbacks. Bai Zhong passed the number 97 to Lu Qianhuan. Strange. Why did that sound so familiar? Bai Zhong's heart sank again. A faint smile appeared on Lu Qianhuan's face as she held the badge. And Lin was on the 98th level. She just wanted to get closer to him so that she wouldn't fall too far behind. Outside the Immortal Spirit Tower, several thousand students erupted into raucous cheers upon seeing Lu Qianhuan defeat Kong Mohan in such a short amount of time. Lu Qianhuan was the only fifth-year student representative left, so they naturally wanted her to do well. Do you guys think Lu Qianhuan will be able to break senior student Wang's record? There's still a chance. After all, Lu Qianhuan has already progressed to the soul formation stage. With her exceptional aptitude in the way of the sword, there really is a chance that she can pass the trial on the 93rd level. This, however, everyone was unable to react to the scenes unfolding on the screen before erupting into an uproar. My God, Lu Qianhuan chose the 97th level. How long has it been since anyone broke the record on the 97th level? It's probably been over 10,000 years, right? Besides, she's still too impulsive. Wang Xuanzhan was extremely talented, but he was still defeated on the 93rd level. Isn't she just throwing her life away? Many students wore wistful expressions on their faces. They were hoping that Lu Qianhuan would be able to break the previous record, but who would have thought that Lu Qianhuan would choose the impossible level? The Celestial Arch clicked his tongue in wonder as he observed from the shadows. And Lin is indeed quite powerful, but he's a little too popular. No, I have to tell little Z to be more careful and not fall for him. Chapter 605. Su Qianyun defeated her opponent on the 83rd level and received the inheritance of the immortal Wrath Fire Lotus. In fact, she was not picky about this kind of inheritance that did not match her style at all and accepted it without hesitation. Furthermore, the immortal was more than happy to give her the inheritance. There was no other reason than that she was simply too beautiful. It had been a long time since he had met such a beautiful woman, so he naturally had to take good care of her. Immediately afterward, Su Qianyun happily chose the 84th level. Bai Zhong felt like Su Qianyun was the most adorable among all of them. Not only was she extremely adorable, but her personality was also super adorable. She was super worry-free. As such, Bai Zhong was full of praise for Su Qianyun. Among all of the trial takers, Su Qianyun was the first to receive praise from him. As for Su Xiaolan, she was engaged in a tough battle on the 95th level. In the end, the enraged cry of a vermilion bird erupted into the heavens. The white holy vermilion flames instantly engulfed the 95th level. These flames were born from chaos, and they were imbued with the power to incinerate all things between heaven and earth, causing the space around them to twist and warp. The man with golden sigils all over his body unleashed a defensive spell technique as an indestructible golden dragon head projection enshrouded his entire body. Lightning snakes flashed under Su Xiaolan's feet, and her body pierced through the layers of flames like a sharp sword. She spread open her white wings, and she leaped into the air like a celestial maiden. An azure lightning dragon began to materialize into a divine sword exuding boundless dragon might, while a white vermilion bird materialized into a flaming longsword imbued with holy might. The two swords then combined as one, and an extremely fearsome energy fluctuation began to proliferate forth as a longsword imbued with the power of both the vermilion bird and the true dragon materialized in Su Xiaolan's hand. She wielded the dragon sparrow divine sword and slashed it down upon the dragon head projection barrier before her with devastating might. Boom! Flames and azure lightning exploded as an indescribable power swept through the entire space, almost breaking through the defensive spell formations around the Immortal Spirit Tower and causing the entire tower to tremor violently. Su Xiaolan made her way toward the man within the sea of flames. Her features were a little pale, clearly having expended a lot of her energy to unleash that attack. The flames danced around her, making her appear as regal as a holy maiden of flames. Not far away from her, a terrible crack had appeared on the illusory golden dragon head of the heaven immortal. Blood flowed from his forehead, and his aura grew weaker and weaker. I never thought that I would encounter a wondrous woman who possesses both the bloodline of the vermilion bird and the bloodline of the true dragon. Looks like waiting here for over 1,000 years was worth it, said the man with a smile. A golden rune flashed in his hand. This is the power of the dragon rune. Are you interested? Su Xiaolan bowed with a smile. I really like this power. Thank you for giving it to me, senior. Meanwhile, several thousand students outside the Immortal Spirit Tower were completely dumbfounded. God, she defeated a celestial immortal on the 95th level? I thought she was just like the other soul formation stage prodigies. I didn't expect her to break the school's unbroken record for 1,000 years. That last sword slash was too terrifying. I felt my heart palpitate just by watching it. That was the power that was weakened by 100 times. If it was the full power, how strong would it be? Amidst the exclamations of the students, some of them turned their gazes elsewhere. Su Xiaolan has already passed level 95. Do you think Goddess Lu will be able to pass level 97? It's very difficult. Lu Qinhuan had only just reached the soul formation stage, so she hadn't accumulated much experience yet. Back then, True Lord Erlang had passed the 97th level as a soul formation intermediate stage cultivator, only to be stopped at the 98th level. That was already the highest record since the founding of the school. Lu Qinhuan has only just entered the soul formation stage, so she can't possibly compare to the god of war of the celestial court back in the day. Can she? Among this group of students, Tang Shimin looked enviously at his friends in the upper echelons of the university. Previously, his goal was to pass the 80th floor and enter the University Hall of Fame. Now, these friends were already rushing to break the record. Why did he feel that his great dream had become a salted fish again? Bai Zhong felt a burning sensation on his face when he saw Su Xiaolan pass the 95th checkpoint. It took him a long time to calm his emotions before he appeared in front of Su Xiaolan again and took out a bunch of number tags. Su Xiaolan's brows furrowed slightly as she glanced at the number tags. Where's the number tag for the 97th level? It was taken by classmate Lu Qinhuan, Bai Zhong replied. A thoughtful expression appeared on Su Xiaolan's face. After a moment of silence, a faint smile appeared on her face. Then I'll take the 96th level. Bai Zhong nodded and handed over his number tag. He didn't want to say anything else now in case he got slapped in the face again. Meanwhile, on the 98th level, Enlin stared at the slowly materializing celestial immortal before him, and his entire body trembled involuntarily as he sensed the vast power surging within it. The aura exuded by this cultivation base was so powerful. This was the aura of a mighty figure at the pinnacle of the return to void final stage. This meant that the celestial immortal before him was most likely a return to void stage mighty figure who was already preparing for the Tao integration stage. Enlin felt as if he were facing the Dark Knight monarch and palace leader Qing Li, and he was struck by a sense of oppression from the power of the divine Tao. He took a deep breath as he stared at his opponent with a scorching light in his eyes. The celestial immortal's body finally materialized, and an even more terrifying aura threatened to crush the space around him. He wore an elegant hat and a broad robe, and his eyes were as deep and tranquil as a lake. Black rings of wind revolved around his wrists, and his crimson eyes seemed to be imbued with the power of destruction. The most obvious thing about him was that his feet had left the ground, and he was standing on a vast expanse of darkness. The darkness looked like a round puddle of black water at first glance. But as Enlin looked at it intently, the darkness grew larger and larger until it was like an abyss that was capable of sucking in all things, engulfing the entire heaven and earth. This was a power imbued with boundless darkness, striking fear into one's heart and making one feel as if they were about to fall into a bottomless abyss. "Ah, human," the celestial immortal suddenly spoke in a voice that was pleasing to the ear. What kind of opening was this? And Lin blinked in confusion, but he still extended a respectful salute. Junior and Lin pays his respects to Senior. "Do you know who I am?" The celestial immortal stared at Lin with an abyssal gaze. And Lin's heart jolted, but he still replied, "Honestly, I don't know." "Humph. You don't even know who I am. Who gave you the courage to challenge me?" The celestial immortal harumphed coldly as a bone-chilling aura emanated from his body. And Lin was just about to speak when the celestial immortal spoke first. "My name is Xing Tian, and I am the most powerful war god of the ancient celestial court. I once guarded the sinister spirit beast cesspool, and I have slain over 100 million savage beasts. I have even slain over a dozen returned to void stage savage beasts with my own hands." And Lin was given a fright upon hearing this. Wasn't Xing Tian a monster with eyes on his chest and a mouth on his belly button? How could he be so handsome? He was completely different. "Senior Xing Tian, And Lin joined his fists in salute and was just about to speak. "Don't speak. Let me speak." Xing Tian waved a hand and cut off Lin's words. Lin, Chapter 606. Xing Tian clasped his hands behind his back and stood tall and straight, giving him the demeanor of a powerful cultivator. "There are two types of people who have come here. The first type are those who admire me and want to see my face. They know that they will fail, but they still want to come here like moths flying into a flame. I will naturally let these talented youths return happily. The second type are those who don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. They hold on to a sliver of hope that they can defeat me, but they never thought that I, the war god Xing Tian, have never been defeated in my life. These people can only return in defeat in the end, without exception." And Lin couldn't help but ask, "Then, Senior, you've never been defeated before. So how did you die?" Xing Tian choked on his words, and his heroic aura also faltered. "Why do you have so much to say?" And Lin's lips twitched slightly as he grumbled internally, "Big brother, you've always been the one with too much to say." I couldn't even get a word in before. Xing Tian then seemed to have detected Lin's disdainful expression, and he immediately replied, "I've never been defeated in battle. That is the truth. As for why I died, it was because I lost to fate." And Lin, all right. You're the big boss, so you're always right. You've even said that you lost to fate. You might as well not have said anything at all." "What? You don't believe me?" Xing Tian sighed as ripples appeared in his deep eyes. A look of reminiscence appeared on his face. "Fine, I'll tell you. Senior, should we still fight? Don't interrupt. Listen to me." And Lin, back then, Emperor Changsheng of the Southern Celestial Court sent me to the southern part of the continent to exterminate the ant tribe in order to expand the territory of the Kingdom of the Nine States. I did succeed and drove the entire ant tribe to the southern part of the Abyss of Evil. Then, I signed a contract with the Celestial Court to guard the demons of hell for the Celestial Court. However, when I went to the Ant Clan's continent to inspect the operation of the formation, I was ambushed by the 10,000 god-devouring ants formation jointly set up by 18 ant monarchs. In that battle, I killed over 1 billion ants, including 10 ant queens. In the end, I died of exhaustion. Xing Tian spoke slowly. When Lin heard this, he felt even more respect for the ant tribe. This kind of death could be considered heroic, so his attitude toward Xing Tian became much better. "Then, Senior, aren't the ant tribe afraid of the Celestial Court's retaliation for publicly breaking the agreement?" A melancholy expression appeared on Xing Tian's face, and he was just about to speak when he suddenly glared at Lin. "Don't interrupt. Listen to me." Lin's favorability value decreased by 998. There was no way to continue this conversation. Didn't Xing Tian need others to agree or communicate with him? Was he reciting from a book? Xing Tian heaved a faint sigh. The ant tribe really isn't afraid of the Celestial Court's revenge. I've underestimated the ant tribe's determination to take revenge. Even if they lose the battle, they're going to retaliate and kill me, the leader of the southern invasion. Although I died of exhaustion back then, I still managed to escape from the 10,000 ants devouring formation with a strand of my broken soul and reported the news to the heavenly court. Otherwise, I wouldn't have the chance to speak with you here. Emperor Changsheng was enraged when he heard this news, and he led 100,000 heavenly soldiers to wipe out the ant tribe again, almost wiping them out. However, Emperor Changsheng didn't kill all of the ant tribe in the end. Otherwise, the Kingdom of the Nine States would have to face the invasion of the demons of hell. At that time, even more of our people would have perished. I have to say the ant tribe's reproductive abilities are truly powerful. The scale of their population has already exceeded that of the past. I heard that they're trying to raise a new king. Dream on. However, all of the other tribes have been acting up recently. Regardless of whether it's the ant tribe, the snow maidens, or even the dragon core of the eastern seas, they seem to be plotting something. All of them are targeting the human race, so you have to be careful. And Lin was a little perplexed. Senior, how do you know so much about all of this? I told you to keep your mouth shut. Listen to me. Xing Tian's brows furrowed in a threatening manner. And Lin didn't want to continue this conversation. He wanted to fight. How do you know all of this? You probably don't know my status in the celestial court. Even after my death, there are still many immortals who come to converse with me. In the ancient celestial court, I was hailed as the immortal with the highest chance of successfully progressing to the Tao integration stage after the 5 emperors. I have reached the pinnacle in both the Tao of abyss and the Tao of slaughter. Sigh, it's a pity that I still lost to fate. Xing Tian shook his head and sighed with emotion. And Lin wanted to say something, but he had only just opened his mouth when Xing Tian immediately glared at him. It was as if he was telling him to keep his mouth shut. Listen to me. And Lin, it was so uncomfortable. What was the point of communicating like this? I know you're very curious about me. No, I'm not curious at all, really. You're very curious about why I'm so powerful. After all, you're the second type of person. You don't know how powerful I am, but you still want to challenge me and defeat me. You're the arrogant type, Xing Tian said in a slow voice. And Lin's lips twitched, but Xing Tian continued. Do you know who I've defeated? The Dark-Winged Tribe's Red Knight Monarch, the Sinister Spirit Beast Cesspool's Divine Bat Emperor, the Chaotic Skeleton Monarch of the White Bone Realm. Xing Tian was happily recounting his glorious past when he turned to look at Enlin out of the corner of his eye, only to find that Enlin was listening to him with a dark expression and his brows furrowed. What? You don't seem to like it? Are you unhappy with what I've said? Or do you think I'm just bragging? No, I'm just thinking, why is Senior Xing Tian telling me all of this? Enlin forced a smile. It's to show you how powerful I am, of course. Xing Tian spoke with a cold expression, but his expression was a little arrogant. Enlin's chest constricted, and he clenched his fists. A confident smile appeared on Xing Tian's face as he asked, Then, please tell me the truth. Are you afraid of battling me? Do you regret it? Enlin's flesh crawled upon hearing this. Holy F***CK. So you're F***king telling me all of this just to show me how powerful you are? I'm afraid, and I regret it. Enlin replied expressionlessly. A satisfied smile appeared on Xing Tian's face, and he was just about to speak when another stern voice sounded. Don't interrupt. Listen to me. Enlin spoke with a solemn expression. Xing Tian's expression faltered, and he was a little dumbstruck. Did something go wrong? Something fell off. I'm afraid of your endless bragging, and I regret wasting so much time listening to your bullsh***T. Enlin continued. Xing Tian was enraged upon hearing this. So let's talk with our fists. Enlin stepped forward, and his battle intent surged like an ocean as the power of his body of the war god surged forth. Boom! Xing Tian was suddenly no longer enraged by Enlin's overwhelming battle intent, and he chortled with glee. All right, let's talk with our fists. I'll show you what it means to be the war god of the celestial court and an invincible legend. Chapter 607. Outside the immortal spirit tower, thousands of students turned their eyes toward Enlin. There were very few spectators for the other 3 battles. The reason for this was that the legendary Enlin of the United University of Cultivation was about to battle the legendary war god of the immortal spirit tower. This was destined to be a legendary battle. Enlin's power was undeniable. Even though many people didn't think that Enlin would be able to pass the 98th level, Enlin was the most powerful prodigy in the entire university. In fact, he was a prodigy that only appeared once every 10,000 years. This was something that very few people would question. Perhaps some people would mock him, or perhaps others would give him all types of strange titles. However, in the hearts of the students of Xiaoxian United University, Enlin was destined to be an insurmountable figure. He was a legendary figure that was worthy of being remembered after they graduated. Enlin's power level was unknown, but he was very powerful. Hence, his battle attracted almost everyone's attention. Bai Zhong, as well as the Celestial Arch, who had chosen to observe from the shadows, were all watching the battle in silence. On the 98th level of the Immortal Spirit Tower, Xing Tian stepped forward, and the black circle beneath his feet suddenly expanded to encompass the entire floor of the tower, creating a bottomless abyss that enshrouded Enlin within. Boom! An extremely terrifying burst of battle intent swept toward Enlin. The battle intent seemed to be able to crush the heavens, and it was even more powerful than Enlin's battle intent after activating his body of the war god. He was like a war god who had emerged from a sea of blood and corpses. At the same time, a boundless sense of plummeting assaulted Enlin's body, as if his entire body were about to be engulfed by the boundless darkness beneath his feet. This was the first time Enlin had faced a powerful being at the Return to Void Pinnacle stage as a soul formation stage cultivator, and all of the cells in his body were trembling. This was the first time he had faced a powerful being of this caliber, and he was struck by a sense of dread due to the natural disparity in cultivation base. But he was also struck by the thrill of battling someone of a higher cultivation base. Xing Tian's eyes gradually turned dark, and his voice was soft and gentle, but it was imbued with boundless killing intent. The darkness on the ground is the domain of my Tao of the Abyss. If the weak were within the range of this domain, they would lose their will to fight due to the endless fear of the Abyss, and eventually be devoured by the darkness. You're quite calm. Not bad. Xing Tian pointed a finger at Enlin. Don't say that I didn't give you a chance to attack. Bring out your domain and attack me with all your might. I'll make you concede defeat wholeheartedly. I don't have a domain, Enlin said awkwardly. How can you not have a domain? Are you a false immortal? Xing Tian sneered. When Enlin heard this, he sighed with emotion in his heart. He was right. Fine, I've already given you a chance. Don't blame me for being ruthless. Xing Tian didn't waste any more words. He clenched his fists tightly, and a monstrous killing intent swept out like a demon god in this world. A golden lotus appeared on Enlin's forehead. He took a step forward and attacked first. His body tore through the air like a cannonball, and his fist was imbued with the vast power of the earth as it came crashing down toward Xing Tian's head. Xing Tian's expression was as calm as still water in the face of Enlin's attack. His fist hurtled toward Enlin at blinding speed, choosing to meet Enlin's attack head-on. Boom! The golden power of the earth exploded forth, and the terrifying shockwaves even caused the abyss on the ground to tremor slightly. Xing Tian felt as if an extremely vast power was tearing through his entire body. He was then blasted flying by Enlin right before everyone's astonished eyes, and his body crashed into the wall of the Immortal Spirit Tower. Gasp! Thousands of students drew a sharp intake of breath. So powerful, the battle that they were anticipating didn't take place. Instead, the legendary war god Xing Tian was blasted flying by a single punch from Enlin. Gasp! Enlin also drew a sharp intake of breath. So weak. Enlin had heard Xing Tian boast about how powerful he was, so he didn't hold back at all. He had activated his body of the war god right from the get-go, but Xing Tian was blasted flying by a single punch. Xing Tian was also a little dumbstruck. Was Enlin really that powerful? He reflected on the power he had just unleashed and confirmed that Enlin really was very powerful. He had underestimated Lin. Very good. Looks like you're not weak after all. You're worthy of my full power. Xing Tian dusted off his clothes before stepping into the darkness. His body suddenly flashed, and he appeared before Lin in the blink of an eye before unleashing an almighty fist. The golden lotus insignia on Lin's forehead flashed as his fist whistled through the air. Boom! Another fearsome collision erupted. This time, it was Lin's turn to be knocked back by the fearsome force. Xing Tian didn't stop there as he pounced toward Lin again. His fists left afterimages in their wake, and each and every one of them was imbued with unstoppable force. And Lin didn't evade. Instead, he chose to meet Xing Tian's fists head-on. Boom, boom, boom. The fearsome collisions caused the tower to tremor violently, and the resulting shockwaves threatened to blast the ground into the air. Ha ha! This is how it feels. It's been a long time since I've fought like this. Xing Tian was getting more and more pumped up as he roared with glee. And Lin's initial success stage body of the war god was very powerful, but his punching power and technique were all inferior to Xing Tian's. In that instant, the seasoned Xing Tian was Lin's best boxing coach. The more he fought, the more exhilarated he became. Every punch landed on flesh. This was a battle between men. Thus, the two of them continued to exchange punches with one another. Sometimes, Lin would land a punch on Xing Tian's muscular chest, while Xing Tian would land a punch on Lin's handsome face. However, overall, Xing Tian had the upper hand, regardless of whether it was in terms of the fearsome power behind his punches or the number of times he struck Lin. Outside the Immortal Spirit Tower, most of the students had also figured out what was going on. They were stunned by the intensity of the battle, but at the same time, all of them shook their heads and heaved forlorn sighs. Student Lin is still on the back foot. He's probably going to be defeated soon. In any case, I have no regrets from this trip to the Immortal Spirit Tower. Not only did I reap a lot of rewards, but I was also fortunate enough to witness such an exhilarating battle. A male student exclaimed with excitement. Exhilarating? Why do I feel like it's a little boring to only use fists? A female student expressed a different opinion. That's because you don't understand. The male student rolled his eyes at her before turning his attention back to the rippling images. 15 minutes later, Lin was still on the back foot, but he was still not defeated. The two of them were still locked in an intense brawl. Many of the students who were saying that Lin was going to be defeated soon were blushing with confusion. Why wasn't he defeated yet? He had already endured over 100 F** punches. A student came to a sudden realization before letting loose a cry of surprise. Have you guys forgotten that Godin once cultivated a type of black tortoise technique? Pete Ho. His words were like a wake-up call. Thus, all of the students turned to Lin with even more admiration in their eyes. Thick skin was also a specialty. However, the Celestial Arch was paying attention to Lin. His eyes narrowed slightly. I can tell that even though Lin's combat prowess can't compare to Xing Tian's, his fist techniques are slowly becoming more powerful. It's quite clear that this is a result of his combat prowess. What terrifying potential! Furthermore, his blood essence is extremely abundant, and even though he's been on the back foot for a long period of time, his body hasn't been severely impacted. It's quite clear that his stamina and defensive prowess are both exceptional. It looks like his divine body is quite powerful. It's really hard to say who will emerge victorious. Xing Tian, who was in the middle of the battle, also realized this problem. The more he fought, the more shocked he became. It was quite clear that this junior before him was extremely, supremely talented and powerful. He wasn't an arrogant challenger like he had described him to be. Instead, he was an extremely powerful opponent. Ha! Very good, Lin. You're not the first type of person who admires me, nor are you the second type of person who doesn't know his place. You're the third type of person who deserves to be my opponent. Xing Tian's battle intent soared to its peak, and his muscles bulged as a red aura enshrouded his entire body. He launched a fist toward Lin with the power of a gargantuan mountain capable of pulverizing countless lives, sending violent shockwaves surging through the entire space around him. Boom! And Lin's blood churned within his body, and the overwhelming power was too much for him to handle, sending him flying into the wall of the immortal spirit tower, causing the spell formation to tremor violently. He had unleashed his Tao of slaughter. Chapter 608. Red blood energy swirled around Xing Tian's body, making him look like a god of death who had walked out a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. And Lin felt his entire body being enveloped by an extremely terrifying murderous aura, and his muscles involuntarily trembled. The bloody aura that was condensed from the slaughter of a myriad of living beings was so heavy that it even caused space to freeze. Xing Tian could be said to be the one who had the most blood on his hands in the celestial court. Because of this, he was able to cultivate the Abyss Tao and the Slaughter Tao to the extreme. Now, he had finally displayed both of them at the same time. Xing Tian made a grabbing motion with one hand, and a crimson-black giant axe materialized in his hand. A boundless abyssal aura swept out along with the wailing of countless ghosts, making the entire world seem like a living hell. My next attack might kill you. His voice was like the proclamation of the Grim Reaper, and the crimson-black giant axe exploded with unprecedented bloodlust. In that instant, even the spectating students outside the immortal spirit tower felt a chill run down their spines. This was the fear of death, and they felt as if they could die at any moment. And Lin knew that in terms of concept and the profoundness of the Tao, the move in front of him was probably the strongest he had ever seen. He didn't hold back any longer. His 4 divine fires appeared at the same time, forming a divine fire sword in front of him. Now that he was unable to use immortal weapons, he could only rely on his own power to materialize weapons if he wanted to use the 6 strikes of the war god. Without the spirit artifact essence, sword burial could not be used. He could only use the 100 swords. And Lin slashed at Xing Tian. In an instant, extremely sharp sword chi filled the entire space. 99 heavenly swords with terrifying power gathered in the air, turning into streaks of dazzling light that whistled towards Xing Tian. In the face of the countless celestial swords, Xing Tian's eyes remained unfazed. The black rings of wind around his wrists suddenly flew into the void and extended, forming a circular wind barrier in front of him. Boom, boom, boom. A terrifying collision ensued. The heavenly sword collided with the ring of wind and was shattered by the ring of wind. Every time the 99 celestial swords clashed, the space would tremble. When a 90th heavenly sword struck, the ring of wind finally showed signs of collapsing. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The remaining 9 celestial swords whistled through the air at the same time, their sharpness producing a series of sharp sounds in the void. At this moment, Xing Tian raised the gigantic axe in his hand and swung it down toward Lin. In that instant, the blood axe split open the sky. The monstrous killing intent and the endless abyss dyed the world black and red. Before the 9 heavenly swords could even touch the edge of the giant axe, they were unable to withstand the terrifying power and dispersed. And Lin struck out with the final sword of his 100 swords. The flame sword formed from the 4 divine flames became the only different color in the crimson and black space. Rumble. The terrifying clash of energies caused the immortal spirit tower to tremor violently. The power of the Slaughter Tao, the Abyss Tao, and the 6 strikes of the war god exploded at the same time. The space of the 98-story pagoda was blasted by the boundless energy, and cracks appeared on the protective barrier. Outside the immortal spirit tower, Xing Tian and Lin were no longer visible on the screen. The screen turned black, then red, and finally yellow, white, blue, and purple flames tore through the screen like sharp swords. Boom! A massive explosion erupted, and the huge ripple suddenly exploded into countless droplets of water. The screen exploded. Thousands of students were dumbstruck. The ripple was connected to the protective barrier of the immortal spirit tower. So didn't its explosion mean that the protective barrier had also been destroyed? All of them seemed to have realized something, and they turned their eyes toward the immortal spirit tower. Reddish-black energy suddenly erupted from the top of the immortal spirit tower, creating a ring of energy that radiated outward in all directions. Xianyuan, Cheng, Tang Shimen. All the students, the protective barrier of the immortal spirit tower has been broken. Lin can only unleash 1% of his power. As expected, the cramped immortal spirit tower can't contain someone like Lin anymore. What's the result? I want to see the result. Where are the guardians of the restricted area? That's right. Hurry up and broadcast the footage. Why can't they handle something as simple as this? Some of the students yelled at the top of their lungs, and the crowd erupted into an uproar. As a loyal guardian of the restricted area, Bai Zhong was given quite a fright. He had thought that they would finally be able to take a break and that he would be able to rest. But who would have thought that the power of the battle would be so powerful that even the spell formation would be broken? Were they even human? They were only able to unleash 1% of their power, but they were still able to cause such a huge commotion. Why didn't they just die? Bai Zhong hurriedly went to repair the spell formation, and after that, he set up a few more protective spell formations before departing. He was just about to continue spectating when he heard a burst of curses erupting from the bottom of the tower. Only then did he realize that the ripple had already disappeared. Bai Zhong had no choice but to grit his teeth and endure his cries of discontent as he flew over to repair the image. Only then did he continue to spectate the battle with an aggrieved expression. He was supposed to be a responsible guardian of the restricted area. So why did so many mishaps occur today? Why did he attract so much curses? Not only were the trial takers displeased with him, but even the spectating students were also displeased with him. Now that he thought about it, it seemed like the mighty figures of the immortal spirit tower were also displeased with him, and the celestial Thearcha's voice was also tinged with displeasure. The more Bai Zhong thought about this, the more frustrated he became. What had he done wrong? Bai Zhong was so tired, and he really wanted to retire. On the 98th level of the immortal spirit tower, Xing Tian panted heavily as he stood on the ground, and the crimson-black axe in his hand was showing signs of crumbling. And Lin half knelt to the ground. Using the 100 swords and divine flames at the same time had almost depleted all of his energy. Who would have thought that you would be able to withstand my attack, which was a fusion of the Tao of slaughter and abyss? You are indeed the most exceptional cultivator I have ever seen in the immortal spirit tower. However, this is the end of it. A hint of approval appeared on Xing Tian's face as he swung his giant axe toward Lin again. And Lin was unable to evade this attack as it was simply too fast and too powerful. An indescribably terrifying aura crashed into Lin's chest with no impediment. The power of slaughter and the power of engulfment tore at Lin's body relentlessly. Lin was blasted into the wall of the immortal spirit tower, and his body was plastered tightly against the wall as the terrifying power ravaged his body. Heaven and earth were stained red and black again. All the students had their hearts in their throats at this moment. They were all a little disappointed to see Lin being struck by that attack without putting up any resistance. If they could, they would also like to witness Lin become the first student in history to pass level 98 of the immortal spirit tower. The energy gradually dissipated, and the figure that was plastered tightly against the wall slowly became visible. However, what appeared before everyone's eyes was not a collapsed figure. Lin was still standing. He slowly made his way toward Xing Tian, and his footsteps were a little unsteady, but his body was still as firm as ever, as if he were an invincible god. Xing Tian took a deep breath as his voice was filled with incredulity. Impossible. How are you still able to stand after taking my full force attack head-on? Why? Because he had thick skin, of course. Of course, and Lin wasn't going to give him that answer. He smiled faintly and looked at Xing Tian disdainfully. His voice was filled with confidence as he said in a clear voice, "Why? Because I'm the war god." Chapter 609. Because you're the war god? Xing Tian, who was referred to as the war god of the ancient celestial court, faltered slightly before murmuring to himself, "That's right." And Lin replied with a serious expression, but he added in his heart, "I'm the man who owns the war god system." Haha, Xing Tian suddenly chortled with glee as boundless battle intent erupted from his body again. Only by remaining undefeated can one be called a war god. But you're going to be defeated by me. He made an ancient seal with his hands, and the dark abyss on the ground suddenly surged to form a shadow vortex. Abyssal gravity. Boom! An extremely terrifying gravitational force erupted from the darkness on the ground. And Lin felt as if his entire body was about to be sucked into the darkness as his muscles and bones creaked and creaked under the immense force. The gravitational force emanating from the abyss was extremely terrifying, but Lin was still standing. Xing Tian gripped his hand, and a crimson axe imbued with boundless killing intent materialized before flying toward Lin. Lin drew lightning from his fingertips, and a bolt of golden void lightning imbued with the power to destroy space crashed toward Xing Tian's head. In the blink of an eye, Xing Tian's crimson axe pierced through space and struck the bolt of golden lightning, instantly shattering it before crashing down upon Lin. Lin made no attempt to evade. In reality, he was unable to evade Xing Tian's attack in the face of the terrifying abyssal gravity. The crimson axe fell upon Lin's chest, and Lin made no attempt to parry it. Instead, he relied on his thick skin to unleash a fist upon Xing Tian's handsome face. Boom! Lin was knocked flying by the crimson axe, and Xing Tian was also knocked back a few steps by Lin's fist. A fist imprint appeared on his face, and blood seeped from the corner of his lips. Lin stood up again, panting heavily, but his eyes were extremely bright, and his battle intent was still as high as ever. Xing Tian's lips twitched, and he pounced toward Lin again as his crimson axe fell with an enraged roar. Lin also transformed into a man of few words, and he swung his fist toward Xing Tian's handsome face with golden light revolving around it. Rumble! Lin was knocked flying by the crimson axe again, and his body crashed into the wall of the immortal spirit tower like a cannonball, causing the spell formation to tremor violently. Xing Tian was also knocked dizzy by the punch and fell to the ground. "Why are you still slapping my face?" Xing Tian was both shocked and enraged as he rubbed his pretty face that was about to swell up. Lin looked at him speechlessly. "It's none of your business where I hit you. F***ck. Xing Tian cursed as he swung his crimson axe toward Lin. In fact, after the two of them had gone through 2 earth-shattering battles, they had already run out of energy, so they could no longer unleash those earth-shattering spells. Xing Tian might have more energy left, but Lin's skin was thick. Just like that, the two of them began to fight hand-to-hand again. The battle scene was extremely tragic. Lin was like a cockroach that couldn't be killed. No matter how fierce the attack was, he could stand up again. Outside the immortal spirit tower, thousands of students were watching with rapt attention and passion. Some of them had even unconsciously clenched their fists as they stared at the indestructible figure on the screen with scorching reverence on their faces. Even a lazy bum like Tang Shimen's blood was boiling with excitement. Bai Zhong was also watching intently, and Lin's battle had truly struck a chord in his heart. That powerful physique, that unyielding battle intent. He had thought that Lin was biting off more than he could chew, but thinking back now, he couldn't help but feel ashamed. Just as everyone's attention was focused on the battle between the two war gods, on the 84th level, Su Qianyun, who had already passed the trial, stood rooted to the spot with a blank expression. She pouted as she murmured to herself, "Huh? How am I supposed to get out of here? Where's that grandpa? What should I do now?" She looked around at the empty space around her, but there was nothing she could do. Her power had been restricted, so she was unable to break through the immortal spirit tower's protective barrier and could only remain trapped within. Su Qianyun heaved a forlorn sigh as she continued to stare blankly into space while grumbling to herself. Achoo! Bai Zhong suddenly sneezed. Is someone thinking about me? He thought to himself with a perplexed expression before shaking that thought aside as he continued to watch the battle unfold on the 98th level with excitement and anticipation. The battle between Lin and Xing Tian had already progressed to the climax of melee combat. In order to conserve his energy, Xing Tian had even withdrawn his abyssal domain and crimson axe as he swung his fists toward Enlin. This was a slap to the face. As for what vendetta he had against Enlin, everyone could see that Xing Tian's face was now swollen like a pig's head. Thump, 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 bang, 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 clatter, 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 puff, puff, puff. Enlin launched a fist toward Xing Tian's eye, while Xing Tian launched a fist toward Enlin's face. Both of them stumbled back a few steps in a daze. Xing Tian felt like his vision was a little blurry, and he pointed at Enlin with an enraged expression. "Aren't you going to slap my face? Why are you attacking my eye now?" Enlin shook his slightly dizzy head and replied with an apologetic expression. "You hit me in the eye? Sorry, I didn't notice." After saying that, he clenched his fist again and put on a punching posture. Again. Xing Tian was a little flustered for some reason upon hearing this. He looked at Enlin with a serious expression, and he could sense the boundless battle intent emanating from Enlin's body. This was indeed the potential that a war god should possess. At this point, Xing Tian had no choice but to admit that Enlin really was a formidable foe. He turned to look at Enlin's handsome face again. It had been bashed so many times, but it still wasn't swollen. This wasn't fair. Why was Enlin still unscathed, even though his face had been disfigured? Xing Tian pointed at Enlin and asked in a cold voice, "What kind of constitution do you have? Could it be that you've received the inheritance of the Xian Wu, or that you possess the bloodline of the Xian Wu, or the Xian Wu?" His words echoed the question in everyone's mind. Enlin's chest constricted upon hearing this, and he raised his head with a serious expression. "I have the body of the war god." Xing Tian's lips twitched. "Are you trying to fool me again? Is your obsession with the war god that strong?" Enlin replied with a resigned expression. "I'm not lying to you. No one believed the truth these days." "All right, let's decide the final victor now." Xing Tian didn't waste any more words as he began to circulate all of his power. He knew that he couldn't drag this out any longer. Enlin's body was far more powerful than he had anticipated, and a battle of attrition was clearly not going to work. He had to use his most powerful attack to end this battle as quickly as possible. Crimson energy enshrouded his hands as an inky black spear appeared in his hands. Boundless abyssal aura erupted forth in a frenzy as the spear that was imbued with all of Xing Tian's power appeared. Enlin's heart jolted as an extremely powerful sense of impending doom swept through his entire body. Abyssal spear. Xing Tian stepped forward, and his body was as fast as lightning as the abyssal spear in his hands shot forth like a bolt of black lightning before instantly striking Enlin's chest. Enlin's fist was enshrouded with a golden light as he launched another punch towards Xing Tian's face. Crack! The black spear struck Enlin's chest, upon which an extremely sharp screeching sound erupted, as if it were trying to puncture his entire heart. At the same time, Enlin's golden fist also landed on Xing Tian's swollen face. Boom! Boundless abyssal power of darkness once again filled the entire space. All of the students outside the Immortal Spirit Tower were greeted by the sight of a black screen. When the image appeared again, it was a scene of both of them lying on the ground. Who had won? Thousands of students' eyes widened, and they were so nervous that they forgot to breathe. Chapter 610. Deathly silence ensued outside the Immortal Spirit Tower. Everyone held their breath as they stared at the screen. Some students even had sweat on their palms. Bai Zhong poked his head out and concentrated on the battle on the 98th level. Under everyone's gaze, a figure moved. The thousands of students felt a wave of disappointment in their hearts because the figure that was slowly standing up was the war god of the ancient celestial court, Xing Tian. However, before they could be disappointed for long, another figure stood up. This scene caused some of the students to exclaim loudly. Enlin also stood up. Xing Tian wiped off the blood on the corner of his mouth and looked at Enlin's chest. There was a hole in his clothes, and a colorful light was flowing around where the abyss spear had pierced through. He was a little confused. "I can't even pierce through this? Is it really that terrifying?" "Heh, The body of the war god won't be broken so easily. A smug smile appeared on Enlin's face. It's my turn now. As he spoke, a golden lotus appeared on his forehead again, and he quickly rushed towards Xing Tian before launching a golden fist toward him. Damn it, what a fast speed! Xing Tian didn't have the time to dodge or block at all, and he was sent flying by Enlin's punch before rolling on the ground. Actually, it wasn't that Enlin was very fast, but rather that Xing Tian had almost exhausted all of his energy. He no longer had any energy left to dodge or counterattack. After Xing Tian was blasted to the ground, Enlin followed up with another attack. He rode on Xing Tian's body and suppressed his movements. His fists were shrouded in golden light as they continuously landed on Xing Tian's face that was no longer handsome. Boom, boom, boom. Waves of terrifying energy blasts caused space to tremble, accompanied by Xing Tian's miserable cries. The scene was extremely cruel. Outside the immortal spirit tower, everyone stared at the scenes unfolding before their eyes, unable to come to their senses for a long time. It was clearly Xing Tian who stood up first, but why did the battle instantly become one-sided? Gaden's defenses are way too insane. Look at his body. There isn't even a single wound on it. How terrifying. Not only that, but his stamina is also very good. He can still use such a strong force even now. I think Enlin is going to have a new nickname. Black Tortoise Sage? I think Taoist Priest Turtle can do it too. Make it easier to understand. Am I the only one who feels sorry for Xing Tian? What has become of his handsome face? Sigh. War God Xing Tian is indeed very powerful, but it's a pity that he met a freak. The Celestial Arch, who was observing from the shadows, couldn't help but rub his brows. That scene was so tragic that he couldn't bear to look at it. Xing Tian was the war god of a generation after all. He was such a lofty existence, yet he was being pressed to the ground by Enlin. Perhaps it was just as a certain student had said. Xing Tian was very strong, but he had met a freak, a player that couldn't be measured with common sense. Fist after fist landed on Xing Tian's head like a violent storm, causing him to feel waves of pain. He knew that he had lost. He no longer had the strength to fight back, nor did he have the strength to stand up again. He was too tired. Suddenly, he thought of how his defeat this time was so similar to the last time he was defeated. Both of them were exhausted. Was this fate? Rumble. A burst of golden light exploded, and Xing Tian's divine intent body could no longer hold on, and it began to slowly dissipate. Enlin stopped his attacks and panted heavily as he looked down at the man beneath him with an apologetic expression. I'm sorry. I've offended you, Senior Xing Tian. Xing Tian was just about to speak when a smile appeared on Enlin's face again. However, I've won this battle. Let's see if he can still flex now. Xing Tian. The words that Xing Tian was about to say died in his throat. There didn't seem to be any point in being polite to this be asterisk starred. He had initially wanted to say that he had only won a wisp of his divine intent, so there was nothing to be smug about. However, he didn't say this in the end, because a loss was a loss. He, the war god Xing Tian, had never lost before, but he could afford to lose. You've won. Your aptitude is the most powerful I've ever seen. Xing Tian thought about it for a moment before admitting with a smile. Enlin felt like it was time to compliment each other. You're not bad yourself. You should be proud of yourself for forcing me to this extent. Xing Tian? Could this be asterisk starred have a proper conversation? He really wanted to beat him up. What to do? Sigh. It was a pity that Xing Tian had already lost the ability to fight. Even though you've defeated me, you're not the war god yet. So don't get too cocky. If you want to become the war god of the Celestial Court, you'll have to defeat the current war god of the Celestial Court, True Lord Erlang. You're still far from that. Xing Tian felt like he should put Enlin down a little so that he wouldn't get too cocky. To his surprise, Enlin didn't show any negative emotions upon hearing this. Instead, a smile appeared on his face. Why should I compete with True Lord Erlang for the war god title? I'm the war god to begin with. Xing Tian. I've never seen such a shameless person. Enlin heaved a faint sigh. Why don't you believe me? That's right. The name of my divine body is too simple and violent. Sigh. I'll change my name in the future. Xing Tian didn't quite understand what Enlin was muttering to himself. By the way, Senior Xing Tian, where's your inheritance? What inheritance are you planning to give me? Enlin asked expectantly. Xing Tian faltered slightly upon hearing this. Inheritance? He really didn't seem to have considered this question, as he had never thought that he would lose. And Lin's expression instantly darkened upon seeing Xing Tian's confused and contemplative expression. Don't tell me you don't want to give it to me? Are you not satisfied yet? It was already so intense, and you're still not satisfied? What else do you want me to do? And Lin's voice rose significantly as he spoke. He recalled the fear of being dominated by a heartless immortal in the past. Not satisfied yet. The corners of Xing Tian's mouth twitched again. What the hell was going on in this student's head? Wasn't it obvious whether he was satisfied or not? He had already collapsed from exhaustion, and the last wisp of energy in his body had been sucked dry. So, of course, he was satisfied. Wait, he seemed to have gotten the wrong idea. That wasn't the problem now. Xing Tian cleared his throat. How about this? My divine intent is limited, so I can only teach you one spell technique from either the Tao of Slaughter or the Tao of Abyss. Which one do you want to learn? And Lin thought about it for a moment and realized that the Tao of Slaughter didn't seem to suit his gentlemanly demeanor. So he replied, Choose the Tao of Abyss. Xing Tian nodded. All right, seeing as you have such astonishing aptitude, I won't hold anything back. You can choose any one of the 3 most powerful spell techniques of the Tao of Abyss. The domain of fear of the abyss can affect the minds of living beings and drag them into a boundless abyss of fear. This is a type of spiritual attack. The gravity of the abyss can exert an extremely powerful gravitational force on all living beings within its area of effect. The flash spear of the abyss has extremely powerful offensive power. You should be familiar with all 3 spell techniques, so choose one. And Lin was indeed familiar with all 3, and he wanted all of them. Didn't he say he wasn't going to hold anything back? Why didn't he give all 3 of them to him? And Lin muttered to himself before seriously considering this option. The domain of fear of the abyss was similar to a spell technique that could intimidate weaker living beings. It was extremely effective against weaker living beings and was a great flexing tool. However, he felt like it was a little similar to his divine might technique, so he decided against it. After that was the gravity of the abyss. If he used this spell technique well, it would definitely be very powerful. As for the flash spear of the abyss, Enlin didn't lack powerful offensive spell techniques. I'll take the gravity of the abyss. Enlin pondered momentarily before making his choice. All right. Xing Tian pointed a finger at Enlin's glabella, and the inheritance regarding the gravity of the abyss flowed into Enlin's mind like a tidal wave. Enlin was ecstatic to receive the inheritance regarding the gravity of the abyss. Xing Tian's combat prowess was limited, so he was unable to unleash the true power of the gravity of the abyss. The gravity of the abyss was actually gravity. Powerful beings could even create a black hole that could engulf all things upon reaching the pinnacle. What a great spell technique! Enlin smacked his lips with satisfaction. Xing Tian was also quite smug upon seeing Enlin's expression. Now you know how powerful the Tao of the Abyss is, right? Enlin nodded with gratitude. Thank you for your inheritance, Senior. Enlin will never forget it. All right, there's no need to be so polite. Work hard and drag Yang Jian down from his position as the war god of the Celestial Court as soon as possible. Xing Tian waved a hand. Enlin faltered slightly upon hearing this. Why? That way, the story of you defeating me will sound better. Otherwise, people will think that I lost to a brat who isn't even a war god. Xing Tian was quite honest about this matter. He didn't hide anything from Ling Xian. Enlin blinked with a solemn expression. Senior, I really am a war god. Xing Tian didn't understand why Enlin was still flexing at a time like this. His body began to slowly dissipate before merging back into the immortal spirit tower. This battle finally drew to a conclusion with Xing Tian's defeat. Chapter 611. Within the rippling image, Xing Tian's body slowly dissipated before completely disappearing. There was only a handsome man in a flowing white robe standing in the image. All of the students were a little dazed as they stared blankly at the man, feeling like he was even more tall and powerful than before. And Lin really won? Am I dreaming? It looks like he really did win. Xing Tian lost. I know God is bad, *SS, but he has once again given me a new level of respect for him. My God, this is a new record. God has set a new record for the Immortal Spirit Tower trial. We are witnessing the rise of a new legend. This trial was definitely worth it. All of the students discussed among themselves with enthusiasm, and even Tang Shimin couldn't help but sigh with emotion. Perhaps I should set a higher target? Maybe I should try to pass level 81 next year? Tang Shimin suddenly suggested. Xian Yuan Cheng turned to Tang Shimin and couldn't help but interject. Senior student Tang, you can set a higher target for your dreams. That way, you'll have more motivation. Is that so? I feel like my target is too high. If I can't achieve it anyway, I might as well not do it. Tang Shimin clearly had a different opinion. Then at least set Su Qianyun as your target. She passed level 84. So can't you set a target to pass level 84? Xian Yuan Cheng suggested. I can't. Sister Su Qianyun has a true Yin body, exceptional aptitude, and she's already at the half-step soul formation stage. This target is a bit too high. Tang Shimin shook his head. Xian Yuan Cheng was speechless upon hearing this. He felt like he had figured out why Tang Shimin was such a lazy bum. A thought suddenly occurred to him. Didn't Su Qianyun already pass level 84? Why is she still on level 84? Tang Shimin also turned to look at the rippling image. On level 84, the beautiful celestial maiden was standing silently on the spot with a resentful expression on her face. Could it be that the guardian of the restricted area has forgotten? To be honest, if you didn't mention it, I would have forgotten about it as well, Tang Shimin speculated. Xian Yuan Cheng. I hate to admit it, but it's very likely that Senior Baizhong has forgotten about this. Baizhong appeared on the 98th level and looked at Lin with a complicated expression. He tried to calm himself down and said with a smile, Congratulations, Lin. You've successfully passed level 98 and broken the record of Xiaoxian United University. I'll announce your achievements to the entire university tomorrow. Fame is not important. I don't lack it. Lin waved his hand indifferently. Baizhong. He cleared his throat and continued. Because you broke the record, the school will reward you with something very valuable. That reward is something that even I am envious of, and Lin waved his hand. That's not important. I don't lack money. I just want to ask, can you go up to the 99th floor now? After all, my goal is to break through this immortal spirit tower. Baizhong's heart convulsed. Why was this student so infuriating? You can, but the 99th floor is a little special. You can consume a pill to recover to your peak condition before proceeding with the challenge. I'll remove the restriction on your storage ring first, Baizhong suggested. And Lin felt like this was a very thoughtful suggestion. Even though he hadn't sustained any injuries during his battle against Xing Tian, he had expended all of his energy, so it was time for him to recover to his peak condition. He pulled out a blood spirit pill from his storage ring and swallowed it before beginning to meditate. Baizhong heaved a sigh of relief as he looked at Lin meditating in silence, and an indescribable sense of elation welled up in his heart. After all, the Celestial Court had produced a top-notch prodigy. As a member of the Celestial Court, he was very happy to see such an exceptional student. Following the conclusion of this legendary battle, his heart also began to calm down as he thought of something else. That's right. There seemed to be 3 other trial takers in the middle of the trial. Baizhong suddenly came to his senses, and cold sweat began to pour down his face. He was the manager of the restricted area, and he had neglected them for so long. Baizhong immediately unleashed his divine sense, and his expression immediately shifted as he traveled through space to the 84th level. Why did you only get here now? Su Qianyun looked at Baizhong with a resentful expression. I thought I'd been abandoned. Baizhong hurriedly offered words of consolation. I'm sorry. I had some urgent business to take care of." "What urgent business?" Su Qinyan looked at Bai Zhong with a slightly frustrated expression. Well, Bai Zhong was a little conflicted. There were images of him and Su Qinyan on the rippling screen, and there were voices as well, so the other students were most likely aware of what had happened. If he were to lie through his teeth again, his reputation might really be ruined. Oh wait, his reputation had already been ruined in order to spectate in Lin's battle. He had neglected all of the other trial takers. This was already a very serious F***king crime. Bai Zhong felt extremely depressed. He was a loyal manager of the restricted area, but his reputation had been ruined just like that. Ahem, the urgent business is... I was spectating the battle between Enlin and Xing Tian. As you know, their battle was very exciting. Tui. It's just that their battle was very dramatic and would affect the stability of the Immortal Spirit Tower. So I went to the 98th level to maintain order. Bai Zhong explained. Su Qinyan stared at Bai Zhong with her dreamy blue eyes, but her exquisite features remained completely expressionless. Bai Zhong was instantly struck by a sense of immense pressure. Su Qinyan fell silent for a moment before speaking. "I had thought that you were a very responsible grandfather, but it looks like I was wrong." Crack. Bai Zhong felt as if he could hear his own heart shattering. What was it like to be looked down upon by a student that he admired? That feeling simply made him want to vomit blood. His body swayed slightly, as if he was about to collapse. All of the pent-up emotions that had been building up in his heart were about to explode. To think that you would forget everything else just to spectate in Lin's battle. You sure are an interesting grandfather. You're not a serious and old-fashioned person, but you're a person who would become engrossed in the things that you like. You're not bad at all. A faint smile appeared on Su Qinyan's face. The light of the sun shone down upon her flawless features, and her smile was extremely mesmerizing. Bai Zhong was dumbstruck once again. In that instant, he felt as if he had seen an angel. Engrossed in the things that he liked was very interesting. This was the first time that he had heard someone speak of his faults in such a manner. Furthermore, from the sincerity in her voice, there was no hint of deception or perfunctory expression on her face. Tears suddenly welled up in Bai Zhong's eyes. For some reason, his wounded and wronged heart was suddenly healed. Good child. I'll take you out." Bai Zhong's voice trembled slightly. "All right." Su Qinyan nodded with a smile before asking. "And Lin won that battle, right?" Bai Zhong faltered slightly upon hearing this. "How did you know?" It's because he's so powerful. I'm sure he'll be able to do it. Can you tell me about his battle?" Su Qinyan spoke in a mellow voice with a faint smile. What an adorable girl. Bai Zhong's heart melted at the sight of her. He nodded with a benevolent expression. All right. Come with me first, and I'll tell you everything." Chapter 6:12. Just as Bai Zhong was happily escorting Su Qinyan out of the tower and recounting the battle between Enlin and Xing Tian, Su Xiaolan half knelt to the ground on the 96th level and panted heavily. She had already defeated the enlightened Dark River on the 96th level, but she had also sustained severe injuries and was on the brink of unconsciousness. As for why she hadn't fainted, that was because she wanted to witness Enlin's battle again, so she forced herself to stay conscious. "Senior Bai Zhong, where are you? Hurry up and come out," Su Xiaolan yelled in an extremely impatient voice. However, everything around her was extremely quiet, as if she were standing in an empty tower. Su Xiaolan. She flicked a finger, and a stream of black liquid flowed over her fingertip before transforming into different forms. This was the Dark River spell technique that she had obtained from the enlightened Dark River on this level, and it was an extremely high-level water-type spell technique. This was quite a good reward for her. She had initially been in a good mood, and she was planning to witness Enlin's battle after she got out of the tower. However, she discovered that no one was here to escort her out. She stood on the 96th level in a daze and forced herself to stay conscious. Her good mood had been completely ruined. After escorting Su Qinyan out of the tower, Bai Zhong suddenly slapped his forehead as he recalled that there were still 2 other women remaining in the Immortal Spirit Tower. Thank God he had discovered this in time. He hurriedly entered the Immortal Spirit Tower again to fetch Su Xiaolan. After being healed by Su Qianyun, Baizhong was no longer as frustrated by Su Xiaolan's complaints. Instead, he admitted his mistake and apologized in an extremely sincere manner. Su Xiaolan was a little confused by Baizhong's reaction. Was this still the same old, long-winded old man? It couldn't be fake, could it? She was too embarrassed to say anything else, so she could only swallow a blood spirit pill before sitting down to meditate. The 97th floor was covered in frost. Sharp icicles floated in the air, emitting a dense chill. Even the void seemed to be frozen. A man in a suit of red armor with his features obscured appeared, and he stabbed a flaming spear through Lu Qianhuan's chest. The scorching heat emanating from the spear made it appear as if it were the sun. I still lost in the end. A hint of disappointment appeared on Lu Qianhuan's face. Don't be discouraged. You can be said to be the most monstrously talented student in the Celestial Court. Even Yang Jin might not have her potential back then. It's a pity that your realm has not stabilized yet. Otherwise, you might really be able to defeat me. The man retracted his spear. His voice was hoarse, but his tone was filled with admiration. A beautiful smile appeared on Lu Qianhuan's face, but there was a hint of melancholy in her voice. The most freakishly talented? That's because you haven't seen the battle above and the battle below. A puzzled expression appeared on the man's face. However, Lu Qianhuan had already slowly closed her eyes and fainted. Not long after, an old man appeared before Lu Qianhuan and hurriedly teleported her away using his spell technique. At this moment, Enlin was the only one left in the Immortal Spirit Tower. He had already broken all the records in the history of the Immortal Spirit Tower, and he was preparing to challenge the final level. The battle hadn't even begun yet, but news of Enlin breaking all the records in the Immortal Spirit Tower had already spread throughout the entire campus. As for the source of the news, it was naturally the gossipy fifth-year students who were spreading the news. Due to the fact that this was an extremely sensational event, the news spread very quickly, and in the end, almost everyone was aware of it. It was exactly because of this that many students wanted to go to the Immortal Spirit Tower to spectate the battle, even though they were still in class. No **T. This was a battle that would go down in history. This was like an international superstar holding an extravagant concert in the mortal world, but the students were still in class. What were they supposed to do? Of course, many students couldn't resist the urge to skip class. Thus, while Enlin was still meditating, a steady stream of students began to gather around the Immortal Spirit Tower. Soon, there were over 10,000 people. Big brother, the Sword Dao teacher wants us to demonstrate our swordsmanship in front of the class during the next class. Is it really okay for us to suddenly skip class now? Yao Xiu asked with a hint of unease. That's our idol's final battle. We can't miss it no matter what. Yao Mingxi replied with a determined expression. If the teacher asks, we'll just say that we suddenly attained enlightenment in the Tao of the sword, so we want to find a place to digest our sword intent. You can do that? Yao Xiu's eyes widened as if she was seeing her big brother for the first time. But wouldn't it be too much of a coincidence for both of us to attain enlightenment at the same time? She suddenly became a little concerned. A faint smile appeared on Yao Mingxi's face. Are you stupid? I've attained enlightenment, so I have to explore a new Tao of the sword. I need someone to feed me techniques, right? That person is you. Yao Xiu felt as if she had been enlightened. That's brilliant. What are you guys talking about? A voice suddenly sounded beside them. We're talking about how to lie to the teacher. Brother, Yao Mingxi turned around, but his expression froze before he even had a chance to finish his sentence. Yao Xiu's body trembled in fright at the sight of the man beside her, and an expression of shock and horror appeared on her face. Teacher. That's right, the man beside her was none other than their Sword Dao teacher, Sword Immortal Dong Yi. Sword Immortal Dong Yi looked at the two of them with a hint of a smile on his face. What a coincidence. I was just about to come over and say hi to you too when I heard something terrible. Yao Xiu and Yao Mingxi's legs had turned to jelly, and their mind were in a complete mess. They couldn't even speak. F***CK. Lying to their teacher right in front of him, they were definitely screwed. Teacher, we were wrong. My sister and I will go back to class immediately. Yao Mingxi tried his best to calm his emotions before hurriedly apologizing to Yao Xiao. Hey, don't leave now that you're here. Sword Immortal Dong, he waved his hand. The two of them paled. Don't leave now that you're here. Was he going to execute them on the spot? That class has already been changed to a self-study session. Sword Immortal Dong, he said. Come and watch this battle with me. I also want to see my idol battle. Yao Mingxi and Yao Xiao were shocked again. There was too much information in this sentence, and they were completely dumbfounded. Who would have thought that their teacher would change the Sword Dao class to a self-study session just to spectate this battle? My God, he's a soulmate. Who would have thought that you were also a fan of Enlin, teacher? This is great. Yao Mingxi was overjoyed. It was as if he had found another soulmate. No, Enlin is not my idol. Sword Immortal Dong, he shook his head. Yao Mingxi and Yao Xiao both faltered upon hearing this. My idol, is that senior on the 99th level. An expression of yearning appeared on Sword Immortal Dong Yi's face. The scorching light in his eyes was something that the two of them had never seen before. It was the same light that they were looking at Enlin with. What kind of immortal could evoke such an expression on their teacher's face? No one had ever seen the immortal on the 99th level before, as no one had ever made it to the 99th level. However, their teacher knew of that immortal's identity, so that immortal had to have some sort of connection with their teacher. The two of them couldn't help but look forward to meeting that mysterious immortal. Enlin opened his eyes from his meditation and stretched his body. He held the number 99 that Bai Zhong had given him and stepped onto a territory that no one had ever set foot in before. He didn't know that his audience had already swelled to over 10,000 people. Not only were there students, but there were also teachers. Creak, the door opened, and Enlin stood rooted to the spot with a dumbstruck expression. He saw an opponent that was completely beyond his expectations. Chapter 613. Enlin was a little skeptical. How could this man be his opponent? This was a man with a head of long silver hair and a cold expression on his face. He wore a purplish golden robe and exuded a sense of calmness. It was as if everything between heaven and earth revolved around him. That's right. The man standing before Enlin was one of the 4 emperors of the Celestial Courteside from the Celestial Arch, Emperor Ziwei of the North. Enlin was a little dumbstruck. Why was his opponent on the 99th level Ziwei Emperor? He was a peerless expert who was known as the Master of the Stars, the Wanxiang Grandmaster. He was a master of all immortal spells and was known as the Grandmaster of Immortal Spells. A mighty figure like this was his opponent. What a joke. You, Senior, aren't you still alive? Why are you in the Immortal Spirit Tower? Enlin finally recovered from his shock and asked with incredulity. A warm smile appeared on Emperor Ziwei's face. Who told you that only dead immortals can serve as trial targets in the Immortal Spirit Tower? I can also split off a wisp of my divine intent to stay here. Of course, I have to give everyone a surprise on the final level. Enlin drew a sharp intake of breath. This wasn't a F*King surprise. This was a F*King shock. Emperor Ziwei extended a hand in a very amicable manner and made an inviting gesture. Let's cut to the chase, Enlin. I'm sure all of the students and teachers outside are looking forward to our battle. So let's begin. Begin? Was he really going to fight? Enlin was a little intimidated. After all, Emperor Ziwei was one of the most powerful beings in the Celestial Court. He was a Dao integration stage true god. Even on the Taichu continent, he would be a super bad *SS. The reason why the Dragon Court of the Eastern Seas was so eager to nurture a Dao integration stage mighty figure was because they wanted to become one of the first-rate powers on the Taichu continent. Only by nurturing a Dao integration stage mighty figure would they have the right to speak on the Taichu continent. From this, one could see just how powerful a Dao integration stage mighty figure was. And now, Enlin actually wanted to exchange blows with a powerhouse of this level. Don't you think he's a coward? Emperor Ziwei seemed to have read Enlin's mind, and a faint smile appeared on his face. Don't worry, I'm just a wisp of divine intent. I'm not as scary as you think I am. Ha! You're just a wisp of divine sense, but my power is also suppressed by 100 times. The fact that he was placed on the last level of the immortal spirit tower meant that he was no ordinary being. If he didn't hold back and accidentally killed him, who was he going to complain to? Why don't you get Senior by Zhong to remove the restriction on my power, and I'll fight you again? And Lin suggested in a low voice. Emperor Wei, outside the immortal spirit tower, everyone fell into a daze at the sight of the trial targets on the 99th level. A true god overseeing the 99th level. This was something that they had never anticipated before. Sort of mortal Dong, he smiled and said, "How is it? You didn't expect this, did you? I'm Master Ziwei's disciple, but I'm a good-for-nothing. I haven't even broken through to the Return to Void stage. I'm here to observe my master in action. Even though it's only a wisp of divine sense, the spell techniques imbued within it are extremely profound, and even I have benefited immensely from it." Yao Mingxi and Yao Xiu nodded blankly upon hearing this. They were so shocked that they were at a complete loss for words. Su Xiaolan, Xian Yuan Cheng, Su Qinyun, and the others were also at a loss for words as they stared at the rippling screen in astonishment. It was quite clear that this final boss had given everyone quite a fright. He's going to fight a true god? Holy Mother of God. And a living true god at that. What's going on with Emperor Ziwei? Is he here to bully little kids? Holy sh**t. Should we get away from here? I'm scared they'll be killed by the shockwaves of the battle. This last level is completely a suicide question. What's the point of fighting? Emperor Ziwei was a mythical figure in the celestial court. He was a true divine emperor. Even a wisp of Emperor Ziwei's divine sense was unimaginably terrifying. In the eyes of everyone else, there wasn't much suspense in a battle of this caliber. In reality, Lin was also thinking the same thing. He was confident, but he really couldn't muster up any confidence against an opponent of this caliber. Ding dong. At this moment, a crisp chime sounded in his mind, and Lin was extremely familiar with this voice. If he had a choice, he would rather never hear this despicable voice again. However, in the end, he still succumbed to the system's tyrannical power and silently opened the system in his mind. Detected that the host has chickened out, hereby assigning the following special mission. Display the true colors of the war god frowny face, defeat Emperor Ziwei's divine sense, and rub it against the ground. Mission success. One special spell technique lottery ticket will be awarded. Mission failure. Host clothes will be completely transparent for 1 year. Note, this mission cannot be declined. Lin, display the true colors of the war god. So the system had already recognized him as the war god. Just thinking about it made him a little happy. Happy my A***s. How the F***ck could he be happy about this? What kind of F***king mission was this? Rub Emperor Ziwei against the ground? If the system was that bad ***s, why didn't it just ascend to the heavens? And that mission penalty. Host clothes will be completely transparent for 1 year. That was F***king forced nude running. That had to be it. And Lin was so enraged that he couldn't help but burst into laughter. If he really failed this mission, he would be treated as a pervert. If that happened, he would have to find a cave to live with the Gundams. Huh? Thinking about it that way, it seemed like the Gundams did have some good points. At the very least, they wouldn't despise him for being naked. Emperor Ziwei's eyes lit up at the sight of Lin's sudden laughter. Mr. Lin, have you finally thought things through? Let's begin. Lin came to his senses, and his laughter faded as he stared directly at Emperor Ziwei. Are you sure you can't let me recover my strength before we battle? Emperor Ziwei shook his head with a smile. No, this is the rule of the Immortal Spirit Tower. I believe that Mr. Lin is not a coward. Come. He had wanted to test out Lin for a long time, and this was a perfect opportunity for him to do so. Boom. A sonic boom was heard. Lin's body instantly broke through the sound barrier and appeared before Emperor Ziwei in the blink of an eye. He unleashed his Earth Lotus Supreme skill to its fullest extent, and his fist tore through the air, sweeping up gale force winds as it descended upon Lin. A smile appeared on Emperor Ziwei's face. That's more like a battle. and Lin's fist crashed in Emperor Ziwei's face, upon which Emperor Ziwei's body dissipated like a cloud of purple mist. A figure then appeared beside Lin, and a golden light flashed from his fingertip as he pointed a finger at the side of Lin's waist. Great golden sun divine finger. Boom! A terrifying power swept forth, and Lin flew to the side as if he had been struck by a heavy blow. He repressed the discomfort in his body as he hovered in midair. He had already finished accumulating his lightning manipulation technique, and an extremely dazzling bolt of golden void lightning appeared before hurtling toward Emperor Ziwei with the help of the lightning amplification technique. The golden void lightning pierced through the air like a sharp golden sword, hurtling toward the purple-robed man's head. Purple Void Bridge. Emperor Ziwei also extended a finger, which glowed with a purple light. There was a purplish-black ball on his fingertip as he pointed a finger toward the golden void lightning. At the same time, another purplish-black ball appeared in front of Lin. A sense of foreboding welled up in Lin's heart. The golden void lightning struck the purplish-black ball in front of Emperor Ziwei's fingertip before suddenly disappearing. In the next instant, the golden void lightning reappeared from the purplish-black ball in front of Lin before hurtling toward Lin. Everything had happened far too quickly, and Lin didn't even have time to unleash his lightning manipulation technique again. Boom! The terrifying golden void lightning struck Lin's body, and the destructive power within it made him cry out in pain. His body tumbled to the ground as plumes of black smoke rose into the air. Never would he have thought that he would be struck by this type of lightning again after transcending his golden void lightning tribulation. A numbing sensation tore through his entire body, and if it weren't for his body of the war god, a gaping hole would have appeared in his body already. Lin was a little dumbstruck. Even though he was mentally prepared, he didn't think that he would be unable to even touch Emperor Ziwei's body after just a few exchanges. Chapter 614. Outside the Immortal Spirit Tower, everyone else was a little disappointed to see Lin being pummeled. After all, his opponent was a Tao integration stage true god, so it was only normal that he couldn't win. Su Xiaolan clenched her fists as she stared intently at the man on the screen, with anticipation still shining in her eyes. She knew that Lin's power definitely wasn't limited to this, and he still had many trump cards that he hadn't used yet. The Celestial Arch, who was observing from the shadows, was also getting a little more cautious. He wasn't looking at the rippling screen. Instead, he was observing the battle taking place inside the Immortal Spirit Tower. Lin crawled up from the ground and stared intently at the man on the screen as he tried to come up with a plan. However, Emperor Ziwei wasn't going to let Lin sit there and think. He stepped forward, and countless black sword intents appeared within the tower before flying toward Lin like a torrential downpour. The sword intents were simply too dense for Lin to evade, so he could only rely on his powerful physical body to defend himself. However, his body caved in as soon as it came into contact with the sword intents, upon which he was slammed into the wall of the Immortal Spirit Tower. Immediately afterward, he was whipped into a pulp by the countless black sword intents. Boom, 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 boom. The spell formation around the Immortal Spirit Tower tremored violently, and Bai Zhong hurriedly unleashed a spell technique to stabilize the spell formation. The protective spell formation was completely unsuitable for a battle of this caliber, so all he could do now was use his own power to stabilize the spell formation. This was the first time he had done something like this, and his old body really couldn't handle it. Oh, your skin is indeed frighteningly thick. It has already transcended beyond the realm of soul formation stage cultivators. Even return to void stage mighty figures might not be able to match your defensive prowess. As expected of the patriarch of immortal spells, Emperor Ziwei didn't repeat any of his techniques. He let loose a cry of surprise as he gripped his hand, upon which a purple and golden hammer appeared in his hand. He immediately brought the hammer down upon Lin, who was still plastered to the wall. Boom! The air twisted and warped as devastating energy swept forth. Lin's body suddenly transformed into mist before disappearing on the spot. The power of the purple golden hammer crashed into the wall of the immortal spirit tower, and a violent explosion erupted, causing the entire tower to tremor slightly. Oh, interesting. This looks like Shou Yang's spell technique, right? An all-encompassing star chart flashed through Emperor Ziwei's eyes, which converged toward a certain spot in the air before making a grabbing motion. A golden cube enveloped a certain space, releasing a boundless suppressive force. And Lin's body was forced out, and a terrifying energy seal started to invade his entire body. Sealing technique? And Lin was startled. Before his power was completely suppressed, he spread open his wings of wind and condensed a four-colored divine flame in his hand. Streams of wind surrounded him as he charged toward the edge of the golden cube. His speed was extremely fast. As the divine flame sword fell, he instantly broke a hole in the golden cube and escaped. In the end, what greeted him was a fist that contained all 5 elements. Rumble. An earth-shattering force swept forth, and Enlin flew through the air like a cannonball before crashing into the wall of the immortal spirit tower again. This scene was so similar. At this moment, Enlin just wanted to shout Mother asterisk Kerr. With such a terrifying gap in power, how could he press Ziwei into the ground and grind her? Keep on dreaming. It was Ziwei who was grinding him into the wall. Following that, countless attacks rained down, whipping the corpses on the walls. Outside the immortal spirit tower, all of the students looked on at the ravaged Enlin with sympathy in their hearts. Some of the female students felt like this was far too cruel, and they had even covered their eyes with their hands. He can't retaliate at all. I feel sorry for God, and only now do I realize how painful it is to have high defense, as you'll be tortured for a long time. I don't know why, but I'm so excited to see this. All of the male students silently backed away from the person who had just spoken, and Lin was feeling a little dizzy after being bombarded by one spell technique after another. He finally found a respite, but when he opened his eyes, he was shocked to find that he was preparing to unleash a powerful technique. Emperor Ziwei made an ancient seal with his hands as the projection of a star disk enshrouded the entire 99 levels. Countless stars revolve in the air as the terrifying power of the stars converged before Emperor Ziwei to form a palm imbued with boundless power of the stars. And Lin felt like he was looking at the entire universe at the sight of that palm. He almost pissed himself from fear. This was no joke. Holy F asterisk CK. Was this a F asterisk King Invincible technique? Was Emperor Ziwei trying to kill him? Emperor Ziwei really was going to unleash a vicious attack this time. He wanted to see just how thick Lin's skin was. Galactic Immortal Palm. He unleashed a palm toward Lin, and heaven and earth instantly dimmed as countless stars shimmered in the night sky. The immortal palm, imbued with an extremely terrifying power of stars, crashed down upon Lin's body, and it was as if the entire galaxy had fallen and the stars had been shattered as boundless power tore through the entire space. Boom! At this moment, countless stars exploded, and a terrifying force spread out, crashing into the entire sealed space. Crack! Bam! The defensive spell formation around the immortal spirit tower was shattered again, and Baizhong was also knocked flying by the power of the explosion. The rippling image exploded once again, turning into a puddle of water that appeared in front of everyone. Baizhong was still injecting power into the spell formation to stabilize it, but it was still blasted apart by that fearsome power. He had already worked so hard, so why did this still happen? He felt extremely depressed. All the students, Baizhong hurriedly rushed forward to repair the spell formation and the rippling image. He was extremely familiar with this process. The fearsome power of the stars slowly dissipated, and a figure was already lying on the ground. Su Xiaolan and the others looked at the figure lying on the ground with concern on their faces. Emperor Ziwei made his way toward Lin as he surveyed the man on the ground with curiosity in his eyes. No matter how thick his skin is, he should have sustained some injuries after being struck by that attack. This looks like heaven and earth instantly dimmed before he even had a chance to finish his sentence. Origin energy of the netherworld. 6 strikes of the war god, Shadow Tiger. Within the boundless darkness, and Lin's power skyrocketed as he pounced toward Emperor Ziwei with a black energy sword in his hand, which he stabbed toward Emperor Ziwei's heart. Emperor Ziwei remained completely unperturbed by the darkness. His mental state was not something that could be affected by a single instant of darkness. He relied on his fearsome divine sense and reflexes to evade Enlin's attack. However, it was also in that instant that Enlin made a grabbing motion with his other hand. Spatial congealment. At the same time, a black circle appeared under his feet. Abyssal gravity, spatial congealment, and extremely fearsome gravitational force were activated at the same time. Even though this was not enough to completely suppress Emperor Ziwei, it was enough to make him falter momentarily. This momentary pause was the perfect opportunity for Enlin to attack. His black energy sword pierced through the air before puncturing Emperor Ziwei's chest. Chapter 615. Outside the Immortal Spirit Tower, Emperor Ziwei was just making his way toward the collapsed Enlin when the screen suddenly went black. Holy F***CK. Why did the screen go black? Where's the manager of the restricted area? What's going on again? Oh, and at the most critical moment, too. Senior Baizhong, I hate you. All of a sudden, everyone was enraged. Baizhong's chest constricted, and he almost threw up a mouthful of blood. The entire space had gone black due to Enlin unleashing a spell technique. What the F***CK was wrong with him to be scolded for no reason? He felt like the number of times his heart had been constricted today. If things continued like this, he was probably going to suffer a heart attack. The screen lit up again, and an image appeared. Everyone looked at the scene that appeared once again and unconsciously sucked in a breath of cold air. Enlin had already stood up, and there was a sharp, inky black energy sword in his hand. The sword was stained with crimson blood, and it was poised to thrust forward. Emperor Ziwei retreated about a dozen meters away with an expression of shock on his face. The purple robe around his chest had been torn open, and blood had stained his robe red. Emperor Ziwei was injured? Enlin injured Emperor Ziwei. My God, that's way too bad *SS. He's going to shock the world with a single brilliant feat. After being abused for so long, he's finally retaliating. I told you Gaiden would be able to do it. Even Emperor Ziwei is no match for him. Oh, what happened when the screen went black just then? How did Gaiden do it? It's all Senior Baizhong's fault. Exactly. He can't even do a live broadcast. I'll give him a bad review. Baizhong was high up in the sky, but he could still hear the enraged cries of the crowd down below. Tears immediately streamed down his face as he realized that he had been implicated again. On the 99th level of the Immortal Spirit Tower, Emperor Ziwei nodded as he looked at the wound on his chest. Who would have thought that you would really be able to injure me? Your decisiveness and timing were very good. What was the name of the mystic technique you used just then? Enlin had only unleashed his origin energy of the netherworld in that instant, and he had already stopped unleashing his spell technique. After attaining initial success in his body of the war god, he could already use the origin energy of the netherworld for a short period of time without any side effects. However, it would expend a lot more energy. My move is called Super Scion Tier 2 Body Enhancement, Enlin said in all seriousness. Super Scion Level 2 Body Enhancement. Emperor Ziwei stroked his chin and pondered for a moment before nodding in praise. That's a very unique name, and the spell technique is quite good. Lu Qianhuan had already woken up and was spectating the battle. Since you've already injured me, let's end our battle here. You've won this battle. After all, you made me bleed first, Emperor Ziwei said with a nod. Naturally, he would not allow Enlin to defeat him completely. After all, such a thing was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. It was better to stop here, and then Enlin would have the opportunity to choose a legacy. That's right, he admired Enlin very much, so he decided to give Enlin some benefits. Enlin faltered upon hearing this. Never would he have thought that Emperor Ziwei would concede so easily. Was he planning on letting him? How considerate. He looked at his system to find that the mission hadn't been completed. F***CK. Emperor Ziwei had conceded, just like that? Was he trying to force him to run around naked? And Lin shook his head with battle intent surging. Emperor Ziwei, I think we should continue fighting until one of us falls. Emperor Ziwei. Had he heard incorrectly? He had already conceded, but Lin still wanted to continue? And Lin spoke with a serious expression. I don't need this kind of victory. Of course, he hadn't even crushed Emperor Ziwei into the ground yet. So how could this battle end? However, what he didn't think was that his words would create such a stir among the spectating students and teachers. All of the spectating students and teachers were given a fright by Emperor Ziwei's sudden concession, but there were also some people who understood what Emperor Ziwei was implying. However, what no one thought was that Lin would reject this method of victory. He didn't need this kind of victory. This sentence reverberated throughout the entire screen, infecting everyone. So, this is the legendary figure of our school? He really didn't bring shame to our United University of Cultivation. A man clenched his fists with tears welling up in his eyes. This is a true, powerful being. Only someone as powerful as him would have such a mentality, right? What is a war god? This is a true war god. It's not that he will never be defeated. It's that he has a proud and unyielding will. He doesn't accept this kind of victory, nor is he afraid of defeat. Even if God loses this battle, he will still be my idol. I'm going to be his fan for the rest of my life. Xin Yuan Cheng turned to Tang Shimin in a slow voice. Senior student Tang, have you attained enlightenment? Tang Shimin's breathing accelerated as he spoke with excitement. What is Lin doing? If he admits that he's won, he'll be able to receive Emperor Ziwei's inheritance. Does he know what kind of opportunity he's just wasted? Xin Yuan Cheng, Sword Immortal Dong, smiled. No wonder the two of you revere classmate and Lin so much. To be honest, even I have to look up to him. Yao Mingxi and Yao Xiu's eyes lit up, and they couldn't even hear their teacher's words as they screamed at the screen. An expression of approval also appeared on Bai Zhong's face. He had underestimated Lin over and over again, and Lin had shocked him over and over again. Only now did he realize that it was no mere coincidence that Lin had made it this far. Perhaps aside from Su Qianyan, Lin was also one of the students he admired. On the 99th level of the Immortal Spirit Tower, Emperor Ziwei was also rooted to the spot upon hearing Lin's words. This was a completely unexpected response. He looked at Lin with a serious expression, and after a long while, an irrepressible light burst forth from his eyes as he chortled with mirth. Good. This is the true prodigy of our celestial court. Let's continue to battle to our heart's content. Lin didn't reply. Instead, a golden robe suddenly appeared over his body as countless bolts of golden lightning exploded forth. A paramount aura began to proliferate forth, as if a god were unleashing his divine might, striking fear into the hearts of all onlookers. Lin's body suddenly disappeared on the spot. Emperor Ziwei put two fingers together before swiping them through the air in front of him. An extremely dazzling silver waterfall instantly slashed out, tearing the void in front of it into two. Emperor Ziwei suddenly turned to look in the other direction, wherein Lin's body appeared with a white lightning sword in his hand, which he abruptly slashed down toward him. This was the divine lightning sword that Lu Qianhuan had used during her tribulation transcendence, and it was imbued with peerless sword intent. The space around it screeched as it appeared, and the sword intent made the air around it shimmer with a boundless sharpness as it pulverized everything within its radius. Lightning also flashed under Emperor Ziwei's feet as he retreated like a bolt of lightning. Crackle! A sharp clap of thunder erupted as Emperor Ziwei's robe was torn apart again, but he managed to evade Lin's sneak attack in the nick of time. At the same time, he unleashed a punch. This punch appeared to be quite mundane, but it was imbued with an extremely fearsome fist technique. Boom! The terrifying power compressed the space around him into a flat sphere. and Lin's entire body caved in from the force of the punch, and a tearing sensation swept through his entire body. His body flew back for over 100 meters before crashing into the wall of the immortal spirit tower. Countless spell techniques then hurtled toward him. There were scorching flames, razor-sharp blades of ice, and destructive voodoo poisons, and Lin was pounded into the wall by Emperor Ziwei again. Chapter 616. And Lin was in complete despair at this moment. If he didn't unleash his origin energy of the netherworld, he really wouldn't be able to harm Emperor Ziwei. If he couldn't even harm Emperor Ziwei's body, how was he supposed to grind him into the ground? How about he did what he did to Xing Tian? He could use his thick skin to tire him out and tire him to death. Back when he was struck by the galactic immortal palm, he really did feel like he was going to die. However, he was also astonished by how thick his skin was. He was able to survive Emperor Ziwei's palm, and he had survived it in one piece. So this plan seemed to be working. A relentless barrage of attacks tore at his body, making him writhe in excruciating agony. And Lin howled in pain. It should work, but it was just too painful. The attacks suddenly stopped, and Lin thought that Emperor Ziwei was taking a breather. So he raised his head to look up. F***CK. He's charging up his trump card again. A rainbow spear appeared in Emperor Ziwei's hand. Countless golden symbols flashed past his eyes as an extremely fearsome sharpness converged on the spear. The rainbow light illuminated the spear, making it appear extremely beautiful. However, Lin could see the scenes of two worlds being destroyed within the spear. This was a spell technique imbued with the terrifying power of destruction. This technique is known as the Tao Shattering Spear. When I unleashed it at the height of my powers, it could pierce through two worlds and shatter countless Taos. Emperor Ziwei's expression was calm, but his hand trembled uncontrollably, as if he was unable to control this power. The celestial arch drew a sharp intake of breath as he flew toward the 99-level Immortal Spirit Pagoda. Has Emperor Ziwei gone insane? How could he use something like this? Isn't he afraid that he'll kill everyone? A faint voice drifted over, as if sensing the celestial Thearcha's arrival. Don't worry, Lin isn't as weak as you think he is. Emperor Ziwei adopted a throwing stance as he spoke in an indifferent voice. Be careful. At this moment, the heavens and earth were like a cage, and Lin felt an irresistible force that made it impossible for him to escape. At the same time, a premonition of death that was even more intense than the galaxy immortal palm spread through his entire body, causing every cell in his body to tremble. It was hard to tell if it was fear or some other emotion. Origin energy of the netherworld. Divine fire armor. For types of divine flames condensed into an extremely domineering armor. The raging flames were vast and mighty, making him seem like a sovereign of flames. And Lin felt that if he didn't defend with all his might, he would definitely be screwed. He was just about to unleash the power of the golden void lightning when Emperor Ziwei's spear had already been hurled. The entire world turned colorful, and a spear containing a terrifying penetrative power pierced towards Lin, leaving a trail in the void that was enough to shatter thousands of Taos. Outside the Immortal Spirit Tower, the rippling screen had turned into a colorful screen. There were only 7 colors on the screen and nothing else. Lin launched a fist toward the oncoming spear, but the golden fist projection was punctured like tofu before striking the divine fire armor. In the face of the rainbow spear, the 4 divine flames instantly crumbled, as if they had lost the support of the essence of fire. And Lin's heart jolted with shock upon seeing this, but he was unable to do anything. He could only look on as the rainbow spear struck his chest, upon which boundless light erupted forth. Ah! He let loose a cry of pain as his body was slammed into the wall by the spear. The terrifying penetrative power of the spear shattered the space around it as heaven and earth screeched. A bone-chilling pain instantly swept through Lin's entire body, and just the shockwaves alone were enough to make the spell formation around the Immortal Spirit Tower show signs of cracking. The indestructible body of the divine god of battle finally had a crack on it. Kacha! The crisp crack was like an announcement of death, and Enlin was struck by an indescribable sense of agony. The spear tore through the war god's body before piercing through the void and the walls of the immortal spirit tower, as well as the protective spell formation. It then left a rainbow streak of light in the sky that extended into infinity and beyond. PFFF by Zhong, who was in the process of maintaining the spell formation, was struck by a backlash, and he threw up a mouthful of blood. The rippling screen exploded again, and this time, all of the students and teachers were struck by an indescribably terrifying power. They stared blankly up at the destructive rainbow in the sky, unable to imagine what would happen to Enlin in the face of such a powerful spell technique. Su Xiaolan, Xin Yuan Cheng, let loose a cry of surprise as he followed along. Su Xiaolan had already leaped onto her sword and flew toward the 99th level. Su Qinyun, Lu Qianhuan, Tang Shimin, and the others also flew toward the 99th level. All of them were worried about Enlin. A series of streaks of light flew toward the top of the immortal spirit tower as all of the students and teachers above the spirit nurturing stage flew into the sky. Meanwhile, all of the Tao body stage cultivators began to yell for Senior Bai Zhong to show them the rippling screen. Don't come any closer. It's not safe here. So go back to where you came from. I'll show you the screen right away. Bai Zhong yelled in a loud voice as he blocked off all of the onlookers. Are you all right, Grandpa Bai Zhong? Su Qianyun asked with a concerned expression. A warm smile appeared on Bai Zhong's face. I'm fine. It's just that this battle was more intense than I had anticipated, and I was struck by a backlash. Just give me some time to recover. Since the caretaker of the restricted area had spoken, everyone else could only return to where they were. Bai Zhong began to repair the spell formation and the rippling screen with a practiced hand. After the screen was restored, it was revealed that Enlin was half kneeling on the ground with blood dripping from his body. Enlin. Su Xiaolan's heart throbbed with pain as she stared at Enlin's figure. She discovered that there was a bloody hole in Enlin's chest. Who would have thought that Enlin's defenses would really be broken? Of course. Didn't you see how terrifying Emperor Ziwei's attack was? What kind of vendetta does he have against Enlin? I feel like Emperor Ziwei is trying to kill Enlin. I also feel like he went too far. If Enlin wasn't this powerful, would he really have been killed? Most of the students were quite disgruntled upon seeing this, and they were all quite critical of Emperor Ziwei. Only the Celestial Arch was extremely shocked. He was well aware of just how powerful Emperor Ziwei's Tao fragmentary spear was. Even when unleashed through his divine intent, the power of that spear was no less than an attack from a return to void stage mighty figure. But Enlin had only managed to inflict a bloody hole on his body. He had already mentally prepared himself for Enlin's body to be pulverized. One had to realize that Enlin only had 1% of his power at the moment. If he had 100% of his power, then how powerful would his body be? How powerful would his defenses be? The Celestial Arch recalled what Emperor Ziwei had told him. Enlin wasn't as weak as he had imagined. That's right, Enlin's power had far exceeded his expectations. Perhaps it was time to reconsider Enlin's power. Ziwei had made the right decision to assess Enlin's power. He had been given quite a fright upon doing so. On the 99th level of the Immortal Spirit Tower, Enlin clasped a hand over his bleeding chest as he slowly rose to his feet. Who would have thought that a spell technique that expended a third of my power was only able to inflict this much damage on you? An expression of surprise appeared on Emperor Ziwei's face. A faint smile appeared on Enlin's face. I also didn't think that my body wouldn't be invincible. Emperor Ziwei. The evergreen technique quickly circulated around Enlin's wound to repair his injuries. If that spell used a third of your power, then I'm sorry to tell you. Enlin raised his head and looked directly at Emperor Ziwei with a hint of confidence and arrogance on his face. You can't defeat me. Chapter 617. Enlin had spoken his mind, and Emperor Ziwei's expression faltered slightly upon hearing this. Indeed, he wouldn't die even if he were to take a few more hits from a technique of this caliber. You can't defeat me. This was a simple statement, but it was imbued with peerless confidence. as if it were as heavy as a mountain. Without power and unyielding fighting spirit, there was no way he would be able to say something like this. One had to realize that this statement was meant for the Tao integration stage, true God, Emperor Ziwei. Sure enough, all of the students outside the Immortal Spirit Tower were astonished by Lin's aura, and a new wave of diehard fans joined the fray. A joyful smile appeared on Emperor Ziwei's face as he looked at Lin. Ha ha! It's been a long time since someone has said something like this to me. Now that I'm hearing it, my blood is starting to boil. Wings of wind appeared on Lin's back, and he charged toward Emperor Ziwei again. For white lightning swords appeared beside him as they whistled through the air toward Emperor Ziwei. You're way too impatient. A faint smile appeared on Emperor Ziwei's face as he waved a hand through the air, upon which a golden cube barrier enshrouded his entire body. Boom, boom, boom. The white lightning sword struck the golden cube barrier, causing it to tremor violently. The 4 lightning swords were unable to penetrate Emperor Ziwei's defenses in the end. Their sharpness was thwarted, and lightning exploded. Emperor Ziwei turned toward Lin, and he was just about to speak when he saw the image of a golden eye on Lin's forehead. Divine Plunder Technique. The flying lightning sword was merely a feint Lin had used to get closer to Emperor Ziwei, and he was only using it to get within a 100-meter radius of Emperor Ziwei. His true technique was the Divine Plunder Technique. Lin didn't know if the Divine Plunder Technique would work, but he could only try his luck. Emperor Ziwei was a Tao integration stage mighty figure, as well as the patriarch of immortal spells. As such, he had a limitless arsenal of natural abilities and spell techniques. Lin didn't want his head to explode, so he could only choose a technique at random. Golden ripples began to proliferate through the golden barrier before enshrouding Emperor Ziwei's body. Lin was already prepared to make a blind selection, but that thought came to an abrupt halt. That was because the feedback from his spells was not a vast sea of talents or spells. On the contrary, there were only 2 things that he could plunder. One was a combination of boundlessly profound Tao wills, and the other was a mass of energy with extremely strong waves of divine soul. Lin came to a realization. The target of his plunder wasn't Emperor Ziwei's main body, but rather the divine intent of battle that had separated from his main body. Battle divine sense was originally one, but it could also be divided into 2 parts, battle and divine sense. That boundlessly profound Tao intent was the power of the North Pole Emperor's battle information. The cluster of energy with extremely powerful divine soul fluctuations should be the divine will that supported the existence of this Ziwei. If he could plunder that ball of energy with extremely strong divine soul fluctuations, he should be able to directly destroy Ziwei. Right? No, Lin would not choose that. He hadn't even rubbed Ziwei against the ground yet. I can't let him disappear just like that. In that case, I can only do this. This was the chance to rub Ziwei against the ground. Plunder Tao wills. An invisible ripple pierced through Emperor Ziwei's body, making him feel as if he had lost something in that instant. At this moment, Lin was already charging toward him, his fist enshrouded in golden light. Dark Cloud, Great Void Palm. Emperor Ziwei unleashed a palm strike toward Lin. Slap! His palm was slapped away by Lin. Emperor Ziwei's eyes widened, and an expression of uncontrollable shock appeared on his face for the first time. At this moment, Lin's fist was already hurtling toward his face. Boom! Golden light exploded, and the terrifying power of Lin's fist crashed into Ziwei's face. Ziwei's body tumbled to the ground, and he threw up a large mouthful of blood as a dazed expression appeared on his face. He was just about to crawl to his feet when Lin made a grabbing motion in the air. A golden cube with a radius of 3 meters began to enshroud his body. Countless golden symbols revolved around the cube, releasing an extremely fearsome sealing power. Emperor Ziwei was forced to the ground again by this terrifying sealing power. Lightning appeared beneath Lin's feet, and he flashed toward Emperor Ziwei at a terrifying speed. His fist was enshrouded in golden light as he launched another punch toward Emperor Ziwei's reddened face. Boom! Emperor Ziwei's head spun from the impact of this punch, and he threw up another mouthful of blood. Moonlight Dragon Fist. Enlin roared with rage as the power of the moon burst forth from his fist. The projection of a white dragon's head appeared, and he slammed it toward Emperor Ziwei's face. The power of the moon exploded forth, and the entire space on the 99th level solidified into a white domain. Emperor Ziwei's body also became extremely tough. Extreme Yang Reincarnation Sword. Enlin clapped his hands together, and a golden longsword materialized in the air. Scorching waves of energy surged through the air. The golden longsword buzzed as it pierced into Emperor Ziwei's chest with terrifying heat. Myriad Demon Palm. Azure Dragon Roar. Lightning-piercing meteor finger. A series of terrifying attacks rained down on the fallen Emperor Ziwei. Emperor Ziwei was completely defenseless and could only endure Enlin's relentless barrage of attacks, just like how he had slammed Enlin into the wall earlier. Didn't you have a lot of fun beating me up before? Come on, why aren't you so cocky now? How does it feel to be slammed into the wall? Enlin taunted as he unleashed a flurry of spell techniques. He was getting more and more excited as he fought. What kind of experience was it to beat up a Dao integration stage true god? Normal people wouldn't even have the opportunity to do so. Some people would even piss themselves in fear. Even if Emperor Ziwei told him to, he wouldn't dare to attack. However, Enlin was different. He was someone who had been brutally ravaged by Emperor Ziwei. Now that he had a chance to exact revenge, how could he hold back? If you really had to ask him how it felt, he could only answer, very good. That's right, super good. Enlin used Emperor Ziwei's spell technique to bombard Emperor Ziwei. He didn't use any of the same techniques, but he continued to ravage Emperor Ziwei in a myriad of different ways. Emperor Ziwei finally understood that all of his techniques had been stolen by Enlin. Aside from a relatively powerful body, he had nothing else. Outside the Immortal Spirit Tower, Baizhong stood in the air and stared at the absurd scenes unfolding before him with a dumbstruck expression. Over 10,000 students and teachers stared blankly at the scenes unfolding before their eyes as they listened to Enlin's taunts. They felt like they were living in a dream. The entire place was so silent that one could hear a pin drop. This turn of events was far too astonishing. Enlin was clearly on the back foot, but he was able to slam Emperor Ziwei into the ground and unleash a flurry of attacks. Even though they were witnessing this with their own eyes, it was still extremely difficult to accept. After a long while, a student finally murmured, "That's the high and mighty Emperor Ziwei. How'd he get pummeled just like that? I saw that his nose was already bleeding from the beating. I feel like I'm dreaming. Did classmate Enlin really just slam Emperor Ziwei into the ground? It looks like he used some kind of sealing spell technique on Emperor Ziwei. It looks like Emperor Ziwei is completely unable to retaliate. He can also absorb the power of spell techniques. Did you not see that? Enlin can use Emperor Ziwei's spell techniques. That's the Emperor of the Celestial Court. Gan is so bad *SS. He's got guts. I'm going to remember this for the rest of my life." Enlin pummeled Emperor Ziwei. Did you see that? That's our Godin. He's an existence who can *CK the heavens. Hurry up and sign up if you want to join our team. The scenes unfolding on the screen were simply too astonishing. All of the students discussed spiritedly among themselves, as if they were trying to express their irrepressible emotions through words. Even Su Xiaolan, Xianyuan Cheng, and the others couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. Enlin had once again refreshed their understanding of power. My God, this is something that I wouldn't even dare to dream about, but classmate Enlin did it. Tang Shimin murmured with undisguised astonishment on his face. Xianyuan Cheng smiled. Do you understand now? As long as you work hard, anything is possible. Somewhere in the sky, the Celestial Arch was also completely dumbstruck. He had never seen Emperor Ziwei being pummeled into the ground like this before. Dark history. This was definitely dark history. He silently pulled out a crystal ball and secretly recorded this historical moment. He had profited from this round of secret observation, and it was a huge profit. Chapter 6:18. And Lin was getting tired of using Emperor Zui's spell techniques, so he decided to use his fists instead. A series of sandbag-sized fists crashed into Emperor Zui's body, sweeping up bursts of golden shockwaves that caused the entire Immortal Spirit Tower to tremor slightly. This was the legendary tower quaking. Emperor Zui's face was already swollen and bruised, and his clothes were in disarray. He looked nothing like the Emperor of the Celestial Court. When had he ever been beaten so badly before? From birth until now, he had always been a proud dragon, and he was always the one beating the crap out of everyone else. But now, Lin had given him a taste of what it felt like to be bashed. Furthermore, he was completely defenseless, and he felt as if he had fallen from the clouds into hell. How does it feel? Does it feel good to be rubbed into the ground? Lin vented his negative emotions as he rained down punches. Perhaps this is retribution, Emperor Zui thought to himself. Finally, he was unable to endure the relentless barrage of attacks, and his body began to crumble. Lin faltered slightly upon seeing this, and he immediately stopped his attacks. "You won, classmate Lin," Emperor Zui said with a smile. Even though he was in an extremely sorry state, he still maintained his graceful demeanor. Lin extended a salute. "Senior Zui, this was only a sparring match. You wouldn't mind, would you?" He was feeling extremely uneasy. Even though everything was for the sake of his mission, it was still a fact that he had bashed Emperor Zui. If Emperor Zui decided to come after him after he had provoked such a lofty and mighty figure, then he would be screwed. This was only a small sparring match, and you defeated me with your own strength. I'm not that petty. Emperor Zui looked at Lin with a hint of anticipation in his eyes. I'm very surprised by your strength. I look forward to your performance in the future. And Lin felt like Emperor Zui was very considerate. After getting beaten up, he even praises me. How nice. Emperor Zui's divine sense completely dissipated. On the 99th level of the Immortal Spirit Tower, Lin stood alone like an invincible war god. Sunlight shone through the window onto his body, enveloping him in a layer of golden radiance, making his figure appear even taller and more imposing in the eyes of the crowd. The North Pole Emperor lost. The Emperor of the Celestial Court was defeated just like that. I still can't believe it. Just how did Lin do it? God really won. He really did it. The Immortal Spirit Tower has been cleared by classmate and Lin on his own. This is huge news. This is definitely huge news. This is something that will be sung throughout the entire Celestial Court and even the entire Kingdom of the 9 States. I'm so lucky to be able to witness such a great moment. Skipping class to watch the battle here is the wisest decision I've made this year. Ka. Some students even took out their phones or photographic artifact to take pictures of the figure in the water ripples. And Lin. Some retarded superfan began to chant Lin's name at the top of his lungs. Gradually, more and more people began to chime in, and their voices converged to form a tidal wave. And Lin. In the end, the chant of Lin erupted into the heavens. This was the most direct expression of emotion that the students had toward the man who had fallen over and over again and stood up again and again. In that instant, Lin was the undisputed war god in their hearts. A genuine smile blossomed on Su Xiaolan's face as she looked around at the cries of the spectators. She was feeling extremely proud of Lin. Even though Lin was situated at the pinnacle of the Immortal Spirit Tower, he could still hear the cheers from below, and his heart was a little moved. He had won. He had really done it. He had defeated a seemingly invincible foe. Were these battles of great help to him? Of course they were. Furthermore, the benefits were immeasurable. Being able to battle mighty figures who had attained the divine Tao, or even Tao integration stage mighty figures, would not only drastically enhance one's combat prowess, but they would also be able to experience the power of the Tao realm to the fullest. This would be immensely helpful in constructing one's own Tao in the future. Another thought suddenly occurred to Lin. He had passed the 99th level and defeated Emperor Zui. So what were the rewards for passing the 99th level? My God, Emperor Zui had disappeared without a word, and he hadn't even received any benefits, let alone an inheritance. How King irresponsible was that? Right at this moment, Bai Zhong appeared before Enlin with an excited expression on his face. Congratulations, classmate Enlin, for passing the final level of the Immortal Spirit Tower and accomplishing an unprecedented feat. You are the pride of the Celestial Court, and your feats will be celebrated throughout the entire Celestial Court, even throughout the entire kingdom of the 9 states. Enlin glowered at Bai Zhong with a dark expression. I don't care about fame. Bai Zhong was a little confused as he looked at Enlin. Why? Classmate Enlin, you don't seem very happy? I just want to ask. I passed the 99th level. So where is my inheritance? Enlin asked expressionlessly. Bai Zhong's body shuddered, and his face convulsed slightly. He suddenly came to a realization. That's right. He had passed the 99th level. Where was his inheritance? Even if there was no inheritance, there should at least be a reward, right? But no one had told him what the reward for passing the 99th level was. After all, no one had even passed the 98th level. That's a good question. Bai Zhong clapped his hands together with a buoyant smile. Enlin. So? Enlin asked. We'll talk about that later. Bai Zhong wiped the cold sweat from his forehead. Ck who? Enlin spoke with a solemn expression. Bai Zhong was dumbstruck. What? So be it. Enlin wore a disinterested expression as he said, Just get me out of here. Bai Zhong. So his elated congratulatory speech ended in such a strange and inexplicable manner. Bai Zhong's heart was crushed. Enlin finally appeared outside the Immortal Spirit Tower, and he was warmly welcomed by all of his friends and tens of thousands of students. Enlin, are your wounds all right? Su Xiaolan made her way over to him with furrowed brows as she caressed the wound on Enlin's chest with her slender fingers. Thanks to the self-healing power of the evergreen technique, the bleeding stopped. Don't worry, it's just a minor injury. Enlin patted Su Xiaolan's head with a warm smile on his face. Enlin, your performance has exceeded the limits of my imagination. Tang Shimin also made his way over to Enlin with a scorching light in his eyes. Never would he have thought that he would one day admire his junior disciple. You're the one who's limited your imagination. Su Xiaolan pursed her lips. Enlin, you've given senior student Tang a new lease on life. Xianyuan Cheng praised with an elated expression. Tang Shimin's expression darkened upon hearing this. When did I become a salted fish? How can you talk to your senior like that? Everyone burst into raucous laughter. The teachers and students slowly dispersed amid a mix of excitement and contentment. Sword Immortal Dong, he looked at Enlin with approval and admiration in his eyes. Enlin had done something that he would never be able to do, so it was impossible for him not to be impressed. Thus, the journey to the Immortal Spirit Tower drew to a conclusion. However, those legendary stories were destined to never be forgotten by people. Xianyuan Cheng, Su Qianyun, Su Xiaolan, Lu Qianhuan, and even Tang Shimin, all of whom were legendary figures. All of their feats were being discussed enthusiastically by everyone. Of course, there was also Enlin, who pummeled a Dao integration stage true god and passed through all 99 levels of the Immortal Spirit Tower. His appearance pushed the story of the Immortal Spirit Tower to the pinnacle, and it became a legendary story that spread throughout the entire kingdom of the 9 states. Chapter 619. Enlin returned to his dorm room in exhaustion. He didn't have time to look at the system's mission, but he knew that he had definitely completed the mission. Otherwise, he would have been running around naked on the 99th level of the Immortal Spirit Tower, running around naked in front of tens of thousands of teachers and students. Just the thought of it sent chills running down his spine. Thankfully, he had successfully rubbed Emperor Ziwei into the ground. He opened the door to find a huge white dog pouncing toward him. Big brotherin', I heard you pummeled Emperor Ziwei. That's so bad *SS woof. And Lin patted the dog's head with a nonchalant smile. It's just a small matter, don't make a big deal out of it. Gasp. Xiao Zhe and Little Lang both drew a sharp intake of breath upon hearing this. He had pummeled a legendary Tao integration stage true god, and he said it was a small matter? How bad *SS? Only Dubai had already gotten used to Lin's antics, and he yelled in a very natural manner. In any case, this is something worth celebrating. Let's have frying pan level hot pot today. Woof. Xiao Zhe, Little Lang, Little Cho, Little Tian, and even Little Hong and Tina's eyes lit up upon hearing this. So this was Dubai's main point. All of the beast pets chimed in agreement, expressing that they had to have frying pan level hot pot to celebrate. During the past few days without Lin, everything they ate tasted like *T, and they had completely lost their appetites. It was also because of these past few days that Tina, who had been troubled by the lack of food, was successfully pulled into Little Red's group, and she chose to eat solar energy. And Lin paused for a moment before finally nodding in agreement to Dubai's suggestion. Another burst of raucous cheers erupted within the dorm room. It wasn't time for dinner yet, so Lin carried Shui Zhantian back to his bedroom. He laid Shui Zhantian down at the foot of the bed before lying down and resting his head on Shui Zhantian's body. Shui Zhantian's fur was soft and warm, and it was very comfortable to sleep on. Master, I'm so loyal and devoted. I'm so sincere. Don't worry, I'll get you a bowl of soup for dinner. Yay! Master is the best. Shui Zhantian patted Lin's cheek with an excited expression on his face. All right, stop messing around. Let me rest for a while. And Lin had experienced so many battles and was indeed very tired. He had basically reached the point where he would fall asleep the moment he laid down. Before he fell asleep, he thought of something and opened the system in his mind. Sure enough, it showed that the special mission had been completed, and he could now draw his reward. And Lin chose to start drawing, and a special spell wheel appeared. Countless spells appeared on it, all of which were shrouded in a layer of white mist, making it impossible to see their names. He cursed in his heart. If he couldn't even see the name of the wheel, what was the point of playing this roulette? He might as well just show the results of the draw. The spell technique he had obtained from the previous lottery was the Make You Cry spell technique, and it couldn't be used on Tao integration stage cultivators. As a result, Lin could only bully a small fry like Ji Yongfang. Hopefully, it will be better this time. Lin began the lottery, and the wheel began to spin. He rubbed his hands and silently prayed to Senior White for his blessings. Stop! The wheel began to spin slower and slower until it finally stopped spinning. The mist on the box that the needle was pointing at slowly dispersed, revealing the name of the spell technique. Holy F***CK. He stared at the spell technique in front of him, and his eyes widened in disbelief. Whoosh! The spell technique from the system transformed into a streak of white light and fused into Lin's body. Make You Suck spell technique. One-way biological attack spell technique. The target struck by this spell technique will experience an extremely strong sense of diarrhea. If the target's cultivation base is too low, it may even kill the target. If the target's cultivation base is too high, they will have a certain level of resistance. Note, this spell technique can only be used once a day. It is ineffective against targets of the Tao integration stage. And Lin almost spat out a mouthful of blood. It was this kind of messy spell technique again. What was the point of having it? Not only was this spell technique useless, but it was also disgusting. If you want to cry, you can still try it on Dubai. If you want to pull this spell technique, who will try it on? There isn't even a single villain in the school right now. Speaking of which, can you really pull someone to death? And Lin was a little tempted. Although spell techniques were useless, he could still play with them. He could make many small animals have diarrhea and increase his knowledge. For example, have you ever seen a snake poop? Have you ever seen a tiger poop? Have you ever seen a dragon poop? Have you ever seen a phoenix poop? Also, could skeletons poop? That's right. He could see all kinds of animal postures that he had never seen before. Just thinking about it made him a little excited, and Lin fell asleep in his reverie, and he seemed to have had a beautiful dream. Could cultivators dream? The answer was yes. Furthermore, cultivators' dreams were all very clear. Some were simple, sweet dreams. Some were Tao realm dreams that reflected one's Tao heart. and there were also dreams of inner demons. Some of the more powerful ones could even dream of a certain type of future. Night fell. Countless stars appeared in the night sky, and Lin dreamed that he made Su Xiaolan angry and was slapped in the face. However, when the woman was angry, she was always unreasonable. As if one slap wasn't enough, she gave him a series of slaps. Big brother in, wake up, woof. Wake up, it's time to eat, woof. Dabai raised its paws and slapped Lin left and right, finally waking up Lin. Lin slowly opened his eyes and glanced at Dabai. He wasn't in a bad mood when he woke up. Otherwise, he would have just unleashed a mountain-quaking fist and pummeled Dabai to the point where even its own mother wouldn't be able to recognize it. Immediately after that was a family gathering. This family referred to the large family of beast pets. Lin also called his neighbor, Su Xiaolan, over. Su Xiaolan wore a light blue Taoist robe, which was a rare occasion. Her slender waist was tied up with a plain-colored sash, and her black hair was tied up in a bun, revealing her fair and slender neck. Her eyes were bright and mesmerizing, and she was very elegant. And Lin, you haven't even fully recovered from your injuries, but you're already so eager to hold a celebratory feast? Her voice was as pleasant as an oriole's, and there was a dainty smile on her face. And Lin massaged his brows, which still had Dabai's paw prints on his face. It's all because of these beast pets. I feel like I'm not their master, but more like a servant who takes care of their meals. Dabai slammed his paw onto the table. How are you going to cultivate our loyalty if you don't take care of our meals and lodging? Woof! Big brother by his right. Shui Zhantian chimed in agreement. Master, only have two hobbies left, photosynthesis and frying pan food. You have to satisfy us. Xiao Hong also chimed in a sweet voice. See? And Lin splayed his hands open in exasperation. Su Xiaolan chuckled as her eyes curved into crescents. Then it's all thanks to Dabai and the others that I have the opportunity to eat this hot pot. And Lin chuckled. No, as long as you want to eat it, I'll cook it for you every day. He extended a hand towards Su Xiaolan as he spoke and grasped on her soft, almost boneless hand. Su Xiaolan's eyes were as vibrant as the autumn waters, and a faint blush appeared on her face as she turned her head away in embarrassment. Just eat hot pot. Why are you touching me? The soup hasn't even started boiling yet. And Lin chuckled. Xiao Cho silently unleashed his flame power to increase the intensity of the heat. Dabai silently pulled out his homemade dog biscuits and distributed a few to his other beast pets. He was just worried that they would be stuffed with dog biscuits before the hot pot even started. The steaming hot pot wafted through the air as an extremely alluring aroma wafted through the air. And Lin, Su Xiaolan, Xiao Zhe, and all of his beast pets enjoyed the hot pot together. This was a peaceful and blissful day. Chapter 620. The next morning, Lin and Tina went to class again. Lin caught sight of a bird flying through the sky, and his expression darkened. A certain spell technique pierced through space before striking the bird. Yupu spell technique. Lin didn't unleash the full power of this spell technique. Instead, he only used a sliver of his power. Even so, the bird's body still shuddered. Immediately afterward, a pile of poop fell from the sky and landed on the ground. That wasn't all. The bird continued to poo as it flew through the sky, and a small pile of poop even struck a female student's clothes, drawing loud screams from the female student. And Lin nodded upon seeing this. Just a sliver of his power was enough to produce such a significant effect. It looked like this spell technique was quite powerful. Tina turned to Lin with a speechless expression, as if she wanted to say something. She couldn't detect the fluctuations of the spell technique, but from the bird's appearance and in Lin's expression, she could roughly guess what was going on. Hence, a hint of disdain appeared in her eyes, as if to say, "You've changed, Giant and Lin." Class time always passed by quickly. During the lunch break, and Lin, Su Xiaolan, Xinyuan Cheng, Su Qinyan, and Lu Zhan were summoned by their homeroom teacher, Flying Sword God, to give them their rewards for the Immortal Spirit Tower trial. Being able to battle a mighty figure of the past and receive an inheritance was the best reward they could hope for. However, other material rewards were still a must. After all, Xiaoxin United University wasn't that poor after all. Lu Zhan's reward was quite simple, as he only received some pills and spirit stones. Su Xiaolan, Xinyuan Cheng, and Su Qinyun, on the other hand, had all passed level 80 and entered the Hall of Fame, so their rewards naturally couldn't be too shabby. Aside from pills and spirit stones, they also received a chance to enter the University Treasure Vault to choose a high-rank spirit tool, as well as a 5th-grade Immortal Pill coupon, which allowed them to refine an Immortal Pill below the 5th grade for free from Yishi. Su Xiaolan had passed the higher levels, so she received 2 Tier 5 Immortal Pill coupons. As for Enlin, he was someone who would be commended by the entire school. Putting aside the spirit stones and spirit pills, there were only a few 100,000 spirit stones and a dozen spirit pills. He didn't care about the 2 high-grade spirit artifacts or the 5 grade 5 immortal pill coupons. He didn't even look at the dazzling trophy and the soulful medal. Enlin directly asked the homeroom teacher, "Where is Emperor Ziwei's inheritance?" Flying Sword God. The homeroom teacher was feeling quite depressed. He couldn't go and question Emperor Ziwei about this, could he? He was the emperor of the Celestial Court. It was not his business whether or not he passed down the inheritance. Moreover, news of Emperor Ziwei's brutal beating at the hands of Enlin had already spread far and wide. It would already be a blessing if Emperor Ziwei didn't settle the score with Enlin, but Enlin was actually so thick-skinned as to try and claim the inheritance? Wasn't this like lighting a lamp in the toilet? Flying Sword God finally managed to pacify Enlin and promised to give Enlin an answer in a week. If Emperor Ziwei still didn't say anything after a week, then, as the homeroom teacher, he would have no choice but to sacrifice himself and speak up for his student. Flying Sword God looked up at the sky. Just thinking about it made him feel like a hero. After school, Enlin returned to his dorm with the trophy and medal. The trophy was carved from vital stones and exuded extremely powerful vital energy fluctuations. It was worth around 100,000 spirit stones, and there was a line of words engraved on it. Enlin, the rising star of the Celestial Court. The metal was polished from 5 colored pearls from the Eastern Sea and appeared extremely intricate and beautiful. There were also a few words engraved on it. Little War God of the Celestial Court. Looks like I've made a name for myself in the Battle of the War God. Even the Celestial Court has officially acknowledged me. Enlin looked at the medal with a smug smile. Don't be too complacent. There's still true Lord Erlang above you. Don't you see the word little on the medal? Student Enlin needs to continue to work hard, Su Xiaolan advised. Yes, Xiaolan is right. Celestial Maiden Xiaolan is my guide in life. She's the one who keeps me from losing my way in the face of glory, and she's leading me down a more glorious path. Enlin spoke with a solemn expression. Su Xiaolan rolled her eyes at Enlin with a seductive expression. Shut up. After returning to his dorm, Enlin organized the items in his storage ring to find that he had a lot of immortal pills. 5 immortal pill coupons were completely useless. Also, what kind of high-rank spirit tools should he exchange for? Perhaps only immortal tools could stir up waves in his heart now. He fell into a dazed state of overabundance. In the end, he asked his beast pets what immortal pills and spirit tools they needed. In the end, he discovered that he didn't need most of them. Only Tina requested a wood-type immortal pill that was imbued with extremely powerful life force energy in order to construct a mirror world. What's a mirror world? Enlin asked. Tina blinked her emerald eyes as she replied. That's the fragment of the realm core you're talking about. It's using the ancient Tai Chu realm's Qi Lu city as the foundation to construct a world within it. It's like a world with a symmetrical mirror surface. Enlin's interest was immediately piqued upon hearing this, and he placed Tina in his palm. Quick, tell me what's going on. Very few people knew that Tina had obtained a fragment of the realm core. A life form fusing with a fragment of the realm core was unheard of. Aside from him, Shui Zhantian and the 3 blood tribe servants, all of whom were on his side, knew about this. Oh, perhaps the Snow Maidens knew about this as well. Tina didn't mention anything about the fragment of the realm core before, as she was also quite clueless about it. Back when she had absorbed the wandering spirits in Chi Lu City, it was more of an instinctive reaction due to the guidance of the realm core. However, Tina had already begun to explore the power of the fragment of the realm core within her body. She discovered that in order to allow the wandering spirits to live in the mirror world, she had to first construct a reasonable world. Secondly, she needed extremely powerful life force energy as the source of energy for all living beings. This was not something that she could achieve on her own, and she might need the power of an immortal pill as well. And Lin paused for a moment before asking, "Is one fifth-grade immortal pill enough? Do you want a few more?" Tina shook her head. "No need. One fifth-grade immortal pill already contains a lot of life force energy." "Oh, right, Jine and Lin, I can project your consciousness into my world. Do you want to come and have a look?" Tina asked with a wide grin. And Lin's eyes lit up upon hearing this. How could he possibly refuse? He immediately nodded. Of course. A vibrant smile blossomed on Tina's face as she flapped her golden wings and flew toward Lin. She extended a slender little hand toward Lin's forehead as an ethereal fragment suddenly appeared in her eyes. She spoke in a soft voice, "I want your consciousness to not refuse my invitation." And Lin nodded. Immediately afterward, a certain summoning power suddenly drew upon his consciousness. He didn't refuse, and the world around him spun as a new world appeared before him. Chapter 621. A warm sun hung high in the sky. There were white clouds in the blue sky, and the clouds danced and changed shape as the gentle breeze blew past. And Lin appeared on a street in a city. This street was very wide, and the ground was paved with extremely smooth bricks. There were many shops on either side of the street. A dazed expression appeared on his face. He and Xiaolan had once held hands and walked side by side on this street. This was Chi Lu City, the extremely prosperous Chi Lu City from countless years ago. However, there were no living beings here. All of the apricot trees along the street had also become withered and lifeless. And Lin looked up at the sun and took a deep breath. The sunlight was a little blinding. This place gave him the same feeling as the illusionary realm he had been in. It was extremely realistic, and all of his senses were no different from the outside world. No, perhaps this was reality. This was the world reflected in the mirror. Jine and Lin, my world can't allow beings of too high a rank to exist, so you can only unleash spirit-nurturing stage power. Tina's light voice sounded right beside Lin's ear, giving him a fright. And Lin looked around in surprise. "Huh? Little Na, where are you?" "Me? I am this world." Tina chuckled. "This world? My God." And Lin was instantly struck by a sense of superiority upon hearing this. He asked, "I'm just a projection of my consciousness. How can I possess power? Didn't they say that consciousness can't interfere with the physical world?" That's because I bestowed upon you a body. You're not just a consciousness now. You have a body of flesh and blood." Tina spoke with a smug expression. Only then did Lin begin to examine his own body. He discovered that his appearance was the same as before, but this was a rather powerful body, not the body of the war god that he had attained. He unleashed his cloud riding technique, and vital energy surged as his body rose into the air. "Haha, there's even vital energy here?" And Lin chuckled with elation. "Yes, Yuan Qi is the same as earth, water, wind, and fire. It is the most basic substance in the world. It has existed since the birth of this world." Tina paused for a few seconds before continuing. "When life is born in this world and the laws become more complete, I might be able to try to fuse you as a living being. In other words, the entire life form has integrated into this world." And Lin was shocked when he heard this. He raised his head in shock and asked, "What do you mean? My whole body can come here?" His main body entered? "That's right, It's just like the transmigration you mentioned before." "Yes, it's transmigration to this place." There was a hint of excitement in Tina's voice, and it was clear that she was eager to try it out. And Lin fell silent. Could it allow living beings to transmigrate? This was most likely not an illusionary realm. Tina was trying to create a real world. Transmigration of one's consciousness could be created through illusionary realms, but when it came to transmigration of an individual, it had to be a complete world. Little Na, how are you going to create the substance in this world? Don't you need realm essence crystals? Lin asked with a concerned expression. There are already realm essence crystals in the fragment of the realm core, as well as the life essence of 9 return to void stage mighty figures. These were all left behind by my 2 grandfathers when they wanted to construct this world. However, my world is different from the one they wanted to create. My world is a world that combines illusion and reality. It possesses the authenticity of the foundation of this world and can avoid the erosion of the laws of the universe. At the same time, it can also make my illusionary creations come to life. Tina spoke incessantly, and Lin listened with rapt attention. Lin knew that Tina had already become a godlike existence in this world. How could he put this? It was truly terrifying. No one had ever been able to fuse with a fragment of the realm core in the past. She had most likely set a precedent. It was exactly because of this that she possessed a terrifying amount of authority over this world. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to refer to her as the god of creation or God. Lin flew through the air. Qilu City was extremely large, covering an area of over 50 kilometers. The Black Pagoda still stood at the center of the city, and there were 9 orbs of light hovering in the air above the pagoda, as if they were nurturing something. Those 9 orbs of light were most likely the life essence of the 9 return to void stage mighty figures that Tina was referring to. And Lin continued onward and flew out of Qilu City. A vast expanse of barren earth appeared before his eyes, presenting a bleak and desolate sight to behold. He couldn't help but ask, Little Na, just how big is this world of yours? It's about 5,000 kilometers in radius. This is as far as I can expand this world. As for whether it can grow in the future, that's hard to say, Tina replied with an uncertain expression. 5,000 kilometers in radius, and Lin's face convulsed upon hearing this. This was way too king big. This nascent world was equivalent to 80 million square kilometers in size, while the total area of the Earth was only about 500 million square kilometers. He was extremely eager to see how this world would develop. Little Na, let me out. I'll find an immortal pill for you right now. Lin spoke with excitement. After a rush of dizziness, Lin's vision darkened. Immediately afterward, light returned to his eyes, and he was greeted by the sight of a beautiful, flawless face. Jin Lin, what do you think? Am I awesome? There was a hint of anticipation in Tina's eyes as she flew toward Lin with an enticing smile on her face. Little Na is super awesome. Lin patted Tina's head with a doting expression. I'm going to do Shui Palace first. Tina flew onto Lin's shoulder before wrapping her arms around his neck with a smile. Little Na wants to come with you. I've never seen immortal pill refinement before. Lin couldn't refuse Tina, who was so eager to learn. He thought about it for a moment before nodding and flying toward Shui Palace on Dubai's back. Dubai flew through the clouds and landed in front of a majestic building. Wow, what a huge palace. It's like a mountain. Tina's eyes were wide open, and a green light swirled within them as an extremely excited expression appeared on her face. Lin smiled at the sight of Shui Palace. Thinking back to the first time he had come here, his expression was no better than Tina's. He was a regular here, and he was immediately treated like a nouveau riche as soon as he walked in. A male and a female attendant brought them directly to Ishi. Mr. Ishi, how have you been? Lin was struck by a sense of familiarity at the sight of the chubby Ishi, and he immediately made his way over to greet him. Mr. Lin, I'm still the same as always. I heard that you've made great progress in alchemy recently, and you've also thrashed Emperor Zue. I'm both shocked and envious. Mr. Ishi was also very excited to see Lin, and he looked up and down at Lin as if he was trying to glean something from him. Let's not talk about it. I fought that arduous battle for nothing. And Lin couldn't help but brood over Emperor Ziwei's inheritance whenever he thought of him. How could you say that? You have to know that you're renowned throughout the celestial court now. Many immortals are talking about you, and many celestial maidens are probably interested in you. Ishi spoke with a sneaky expression. Tina's mouth gaped open as she stared at the man before her. A giant god fiend with Shui Zhantian's bloodline? And Lin, Ishi faltered slightly upon hearing this, and he turned to discover a flawlessly perfect fairy looking at him with amazement in her eyes. Holy F***CK. What a beautiful fairy. Chapter 622. Tina recoiled in fright at that roar, as she rubbed her head against Lin's neck before tugging on Lin's hair as she stared fearfully at the fatso before her. She finally realized that he had lost his composure, and he chuckled sheepishly. He then turned to Lin with an envious expression. Not bad, Lin. Such a beautiful fairy. What's going on? And Lin introduced with a gentle smile. Her name is Tina, and she's my beast pet. He's Ishi, the #1 pill refinement master of Do Shui Palace, as well as the #1 pill refinement master of the Celestial Court. Ishi's lips twitched. Beast pet? And Lin, what kind of dumb luck do you have to have such a beautiful fairy as your follower? And Lin, Tina's eyes widened. Giant and Lin, he can refine pills even though he's so fat? Could it be that the more his body resembles a pill, the better his pill refinement skills are? Ishi, don't spout nonsense, little nah. Big brother, Ishi has a great body, and Lin rebuked. Oh, Tina pouted before, falling silent obediently. Ishi massaged his brows. All right, you guys win. It's rare for you to say something like that, but your Tina immediately retaliated for you. What else can I say? Tina giggled. I'm just telling the truth. All right, let's get down to business. And Lin pulled out a 5th grade immortal pill coupon with a smile. Refine me a 5th grade wood type immortal pill with the richest life force. Ishi's eyes lit up. Are you going to show off your pill eating skills again? No, Tina wants to eat it, and Lin replied. Ishi was a little disappointed, but he still began to refine the immortal pill. What he wanted to concoct was a 5th-tier immortal pill, the Verdant Emperor Immortal Flower Pill. It was concocted by extracting the essence of 9 different immortal flowers and using the Verdant Emperor Immortal Vine to concoct it. It had the effect of reviving the dead, and it contained an extremely rich life force. Ishi's hands danced through the air as he manipulated the white divine flame, upon which a series of extremely precious medicinal ingredients hovered in midair. His round body continuously moved about as if he was dancing. The divine flame also danced along with him. Tina was dumbfounded. Dancing was an eyesore, but this was the first time she had seen such a nimble fatty. Unknowingly, it was time to condense the pill. A white elixir shrouded in immortal chi appeared in the air. Boundless life energy rippled outward, and countless projections of immortal flowers bloomed around the pill, making the azure, the arch immortal flower pill even more beautiful. So beautiful. And Lin and Tina stared blankly at the pill as they spoke in unison. Ishi had a smug expression on his face. He felt the greatest sense of accomplishment when he completed the pill. And Lin pulled out an immortal pill coupon and gave it to Ishi as payment for this immortal pill. Then, he immediately bade farewell. The scene he wanted to see the most was about to unfold. In the dorm room, Tina held the huge immortal pill in her hands with a smile. When I ate immortal pills in the past, they were even bigger than me, and I had to hold them and chew them slowly. I should be able to eat them much faster now. And Lin nodded. Hurry up and eat them. Oh, right, before you give birth to life, let me enter your world first, he added after a moment of thought. He had a feeling that witnessing the creation and birth of life would be an unimaginable opportunity. Tina pressed her palm against Lin's forehead again, and a powerful summoning power swept toward him. And Lin felt a rush of dizziness before his consciousness reappeared in Tina's world. He stretched his slightly frail body. That's enough. All right, then I'll eat the immortal pill and prepare to give birth to life, Tina said with a wide grin. And Lin unleashed his cloud riding technique, and flew into the air to sense the changes taking place around him. Everything was extremely quiet, but an extremely penetrating light suddenly burst forth from the top of the Black Tower at the center of Chi-Lu City. At the same time, 9 balls of light began to revolve around the top of the tower like planets. An invisible ripple began to spread from the top of the tower to heaven and earth, reaching infinitely high and infinitely far. The aura of life appeared from nothingness, just like the harmony of yin and yang, and life and death intertwined. Wisps of life began to emerge from the boundless, deathly stillness. Heaven and earth began to tremble. This was an earth-shattering transformation as countless laws began to be reconstructed. In that instant, Enlin's entire body felt extremely comfortable, as if his life had been elevated and his soul had been cleansed. Only now did he truly feel like he was a living being. That's right, Tina had only bestowed upon him a body, not a complete life form. However, now that life force had appeared in heaven and earth, his body was finally filled with life force. This heaven and earth had completely changed. It was as if heaven and earth had been split apart from chaos, as if the first wisp of light had been born from the darkness. Life had been born from the boundless, deathly stillness. This was an extremely grand creation. The sun was warm, and a light breeze brought with it the aura of life. Tiny plants began to appear on the ground. Then, under the urging of some kind of power, the renewal of life began to speed up. Countless microorganisms appeared, grass grew on the ground, new buds appeared on the withered apricot tree, and a wildflower swayed in the wind. Master, the living beings here are still quite simple, so I'm going to speed up the passage of time. Tina's voice sounded. Enlin was completely dumbfounded upon hearing this. She could even control time? This was something that even Dao integration stage mighty figures would find difficult to accomplish on the Tai Chu continent. This won't affect me, right? Enlin was afraid that his lifespan would be shortened as well. F***CK. It would be hilarious if he were to die of old age after coming here to watch the show. It won't. My time manipulation can only be used on the living beings of this world, Tina replied patiently. The living beings around him began to speed up upon seeing Enlin's nod. Everything was progressing extremely quickly, as if a video had been sped up tens of thousands of times, or even hundreds of millions of times. Enlin flew out of Chi-Lu City. Originally, there was only a vast expanse of grasslands and small plants here. However, as the ecosystem continued to develop, the living beings here began to multiply, grow, mutate, and multiply, and the diversity of the living beings here began to increase. Not only were there grasslands here, but there were also deserts, forests, lakes, streams, and rivers. There were also a series of mountain ranges, basins, and valleys. Insects, mammals, all types of primitive fish, and birds also began to appear. All of this was a miracle of creation. Enlin flew over this continent, and his divine sense expanded to its fullest extent as he observed the miracle of life. He could sense the life of all living beings, as well as the miraculous process of nurturing all living beings. As more and more living beings appeared, it became more and more difficult for Tina to accelerate time. Giant Enlin, let's call it day. The power of the immortal pill has been used up, and I've also run out of energy. Let this world evolve naturally for a while. Tina's voice suddenly sounded. Enlin finally came to his senses after being immersed in the miraculous and harmonious nature of life. He looked at the mountains in front of him. There was a rabbit that was taller than a human. It opened its sharp teeth and pounced on a wolf. It directly bit off the wolf's neck and continued to chew on it. Enlin felt like he had never seen such a creature before. This was a very interesting world. He was also feeling quite tired. Paying close attention to all of this was extremely taxing on his mind. All right, little Na, teleport me out of here as well, Enlin said as he massaged his brows. The scenery in front of him changed. His vision darkened and brightened. He once again appeared in the room of the small attic. It was already late at night. Before he knew it, another day had passed, and he had skipped classes for a day. No, perhaps it had been a few days. After all, he didn't know if this night was the same night that he had entered Tina's world. Whatever, I'll go to sleep first. And Lin was so sleepy that he fell asleep as soon as he lay down. Tina was even more exhausted than before, and her petite body was curled up into a ball as she tugged in Lin's hair with her slender little hands. Her golden wings dimmed as if they had been switched off, and she fell into a deep sleep. Chapter 6:23. And Lin slept soundly for the entire night, and when he woke up in the morning, he was greeted by a faint fragrance that resembled the fragrance of a lotus flower blooming under the moonlight. It was light and refreshing, but it was also extremely alluring. He opened his eyes to find a petite woman lying beside him. She was indeed quite petite. After all, she was only 20 centimeters tall. The woman was lying on her side, and her features were flawlessly beautiful. Every inch of her body was perfect. Her breathing was extremely even, and her eyelashes trembled slightly. Her skin was translucent, and it was even more dazzling than her white dress under the sunlight. She really was beautiful, and Lin couldn't help but admire her beauty for a while longer before slowly rising to his feet. He was about to go to class when he heard the faint sound of singing drifting toward him from the window in the hall. He knew that Xiao Hong was photosynthesizing and singing again. Xiao Hong, how long has it been since I entered Tina's world? And Lin opened the window and asked. La la la. The singing stopped abruptly. Master, it's been 5 days. Xiao Hong swayed her red head from side to side as she replied in a sweet voice. Xiaolan also went to look for you, and she applied for a leave of absence for you after discovering your sleeping state. And Lin was quite pleased to hear this. So it had been almost a week. Time sure flies by. However, seeing as Su Xiaolan has already applied for a leave of absence for me, I might as well continue skipping classes. After all, attending classes was nowhere as interesting as watching the creation of a world. And Lin cooked up a kung pao chicken with a frying pan, and an alluring aroma wafted throughout the entire penthouse. Aside from Shui Zhantian, Little Lang, Little Xiao, and Little Lang, who had already gone out to cultivate, all of his beast pets gathered around him, drooling as they stared at the dish in the frying pan, eagerly anticipating the day when it was ready. Even Tina, who was still in her dream, sat up in shock before flying toward Lin in the direction of the scent. Giant and Lin, are you going to let me sleep? Do you know how conflicted I was just then? Tina grumbled in a daze as she pounced toward the frying pan, and Lin grabbed onto Tina's slender waist. I didn't ask you to wake up to eat. Also, it's not cooked yet. After I'm done, we'll split it evenly. Oof. You're clearly trying to wake me up. You're trying to lure me out of bed. Tina pouted angrily, but her eyes were still focused on the pot. Then continue to sleep. My hypnosis is very good. I can quickly hypnotize you, woof. Dabai raised his paw and chuckled. My lullaby is also very powerful. Do you want to give it a try, little Na? Xiao Hong asked in her sweet voice. It was always better to have one less person to share food with, so Little Red and Dabai both looked at Tina with ill intentions. This scared Tina so much that she shrank back onto Lin's shoulder and shouted for him to stop. As the pet beasts joked around, the Kung Pao chicken was ready. Each of the pet beasts was given a plate of Kung Pao chicken, and they enjoyed it so much that they almost finished licking the sauce on the plate. After a hearty meal, Lin fed Tina a wood elemental high-rank spirit pill to replenish her energy. After that, he allowed Tina to project his consciousness into the mirror world to observe the development of the world. The world had developed to a point where it was bursting with vitality. There were all types of exotic plants, birds, and beasts, and Lin was completely overwhelmed. Master, I can only stabilize the flow of time in this world at around 100,000 times the normal flow of time. I won't be able to do it any faster. Tina's voice suddenly sounded. Thus, the development of this world became more and more complete, and the number of species also increased from tens of thousands to over 1 million. Perhaps it was due to the fact that there was an invisible hand controlling this world, but the probability of these creatures mutating and giving birth to new species was very high. In other words, some of these creatures were no longer just barbaric beasts. Instead, They had developed a certain level of intelligence. Their eyes were intelligent, their hearts were calm, and some of them could even use simple tools. Soon, the world entered the era of the giant beasts. The top of the food chain was dominated by massive, ferocious beasts. These ferocious beasts were a little like the dinosaurs that Lin knew of. Some of them were burly, some were fast, and some were like locusts. In a short period of time, they dominated the entire world. These big guys are so annoying. They can reproduce, but they can also eat. All of these plants and small animals are going to be eaten by them sooner or later. Tina grumbled in a rare display, and Lin smiled. The way the dinosaurs were developing was going to create an ecological imbalance sooner or later. When that time came, the dinosaurs would most likely go extinct due to the lack of food and the harsh environment. This world would eventually adjust in its own way. A thought suddenly occurred to Lin as he looked at the booming development of the dinosaur race. Tina, can you make the dinosaurs smarter? Smarter? Tina paused for a moment before replying. It's impossible to reach the level of a highly intelligent creature. That's a different level of consciousness. However, if you want to make them more agile and give them the ability to learn, you can achieve it by modifying their genes. Then let's give it a try. And Lin was excited. Also, you can also control their numbers, he added. Oh, Tina obeyed obediently. Thus, the next generation of dinosaurs underwent a mutation. The giraffe-like mother, Brachiosaurus, gave birth to a baby dinosaur with a thick neck and a large, ferocious mouth. The Brachiosaurus was completely dumbfounded and felt like it had given birth to a fake baby. However, she looked at the other Brachiosaurus mothers next door and discovered that some of them had also given birth to baby dinosaurs like this, so she no longer paid any heed to this. These baby dinosaurs were different from the Brachiosaurus mothers. They had long and slender limbs and were extremely agile. They didn't eat herbivores and hunted all types of animals to eat. After the baby dinosaurs grew up, they became even more picky. A pack of ferocious Tyrannosaurus rex charged into the pack of Brachiosaurus, and all of the Brachiosaurus mothers fled for their lives. However, a pack of grown-up Brachiosaurus bravely stood up and pounced toward the Tyrannosaurus rex. This was a brutal battle. The new Brachiosaurus rex's mouth was even larger than the Tyrannosaurus rex's mouth, and its bite force was even more terrifying. In the end, the Tyrannosaurus rex was completely devoured. The older generation of Brachiosaurus rex stared at the group of grown-up Brachiosaurus rex with confusion on their faces. The most ferocious Tyrannosaurus rex had been killed and even eaten by their children. Within a vast river, a female Brachiosaurus rex was trembling uncontrollably while a male Brachiosaurus rex circled around her with a nervous expression. PFFF. The female Brachiosaurus had laid an egg. The male Brachiosaurus rex stared at the huge white egg with confusion in its eyes. Why was there only one egg? Weren't there usually around a dozen eggs? Could it be that it was already too late? At the same time, a pack of shark-toothed dragons with thick and long arms picked up a huge rock and hurled it towards enemies for the first time in a fierce battle. And Lin looked on with excitement at the development of the dinosaurs. He wanted to see just how much more intelligent dinosaurs could develop. Tina was also very considerate. Even though time was fast-forwarding most of the time, she would occasionally restore the normal flow of time so that Lin could carefully observe the habits and lifestyles of the dinosaurs. Gradually, the dinosaurs developed from a group into a tribe. Not only would the tribes slaughter one another, but even their own brethren would also slaughter one another. Some of the more nimble dinosaurs invented all types of stone tools, some of which even placed stones on their heads or necks as protective gear to prevent their enemies from tearing at them. Soon, dinosaurs that had fused with the vital energy of heaven and earth were born. They were known as dinosaur mutant beasts. Chapter 624. When a life form reached a certain level of power, it could even fuse the vital energy of heaven and earth into its body to strengthen its muscles and bones, thereby elevating its life force to a higher level. The first life form in this world that had fused vital energy was born. It was a Tyrannosaurus rex. This Tyrannosaurus rex was extremely tall and powerful, and it was able to snap the neck of a shark-toothed dinosaur with a single bite. With its immense power, it quickly became the chief of a Tyrannosaurus rex tribe and began to conquer the world. As the saying goes, if there is one, there will be two. One by one, dinosaurs that fused with vitality were born. Some creatures like wolves, lions, and crocodiles that happened to eat the corpses of dinosaurs that had fused vital energy were also able to fuse vital energy into their bodies. The structure of this world began to change. It became more and more complex, but also more and more powerful. At this moment, Tina could only accelerate time to around 10,000 times. In the deep sea, ichthyosaurs ruled the seas. They were bloodthirsty and violent, and there was nothing they wouldn't eat. Ichthyosaur mutant beasts like WIRMS that could control water-type spell techniques were also born. Flying dragons soared in the sky. Their bodies were light and graceful, but their wings were as sharp as swords. They tore through the air and flew at low altitudes, and their wings could even slice off the heads of the dinosaurs on the ground. The shockwaves released from their mouths could even knock down birds in the distance. They were the rulers of the heavens. On land, all types of carnivorous dinosaurs contended with one another, and battles between chiefs could even shatter a small mountain. This was a spectacular era of dinosaurs, and it was also a grand painting of the development of life. And Lin was completely entranced. Giant and Lin, I feel like the spiritual aura of this world has accumulated enough, so we can attempt to create highly intelligent life forms. Tina's voice suddenly sounded, and Lin shuddered upon hearing this. What? You're saying we can create humans? And Lin was astonished. No, Tina immediately denied. I've already taken in so many souls, so we can create humans first. The other life forms we can create are the races that are related to the life essence of those 9 high-level life forms. They basically represent the highest form of life in their respective races. Due to the fact that their inheritances are complete, their life force genes are extremely outstanding, so it's relatively easy to nurture a life form's body and the race's consciousness. And Lin nodded upon hearing this and didn't object to Tina's decision. Whoosh! Right at this moment, a resplendent light appeared beside him. And Lin tilted his head to the side, and his pupils shrank slightly. He was greeted by the sight of a flawless woman with translucent skin and flawless features. Her white dress fluttered in the wind, and her long golden hair shone beautifully under the sunlight. Her green eyes shone with the luster of a gem, and her face had an extremely enchanting smile. She was like a saintess, yet also like the most perfect angel. Even Lin felt a little infatuated when he saw her. He was a little unsure. It's me. The woman smiled charmingly. What's wrong? My appearance hasn't changed, right? Why do you look like you don't know me? And Lin took a deep breath. How did you get bigger? That's right, Tina was now 7 meters tall. Her appearance was like a fairy from the 9th heaven, which made Lin extremely envious. A smug smile appeared on Tina's face as she replied, Because I wanted to become this big, so I became this big. I can become even bigger. In this world, I can do whatever I want. She lifted the hem of her dress as she spoke and twirled gracefully in a circle on the tip of her foot. Her lithe and graceful figure swayed gently as her white dress fluttered in the wind. She was like a peerless lotus flower that had suddenly blossomed. Do I look good? Tina's voice was like spring water as she asked with a smile. And Lin swallowed and nodded. It's beautiful, but why did you appear here? Of course, the feeling of being one with heaven and earth isn't as direct as the feeling of being an individual. I've chosen a few spare spots, and I'm planning to experience them as an individual, Tina replied. Oh, and Lin nodded with a slightly perplexed expression. Then let's go. Tina giggled as she latched onto Lin's hand. She stepped forward, and the space around them instantly transformed. In the next instant, Lin discovered that he had arrived above an extremely unfamiliar ocean. He was given a fright. This method of teleportation was much more badass than spatial teleportation. There were no side effects, and he didn't feel anything either. He had teleported to another place in the blink of an eye. I'll use this ocean to nurture the spirit fish clan and the heavenly turtle tribe, Tina murmured. Lin blinked. How are we going to nurture them? Nurture them in the water? The spirit fish clan and the heavenly turtle tribe are both amphibious, so let's create a continent first. Tina spread open her hand, and the entire ocean instantly began to churn. Massive waves rose into the air, and an extremely massive continent began to rise from the bottom of the ocean. From a rough estimate, this continent was at least over 500 kilometers wide. Lin was dumbstruck. He had no choice but to kneel before this mighty figure who had created a continent at her word. Lin only came to a realization now. Tina was the goddess of creation, the god of creation. In this place, she could do whatever she wanted. But this place is a little barren, and Lin was a little hesitant as he looked at the strange, craggy continent before him. A white light flashed through Tina's eyes. Area time acceleration. Boundless energy fluctuations engulfed heaven and earth as plants began to sprout from the barren continent, quickly transforming it into a lush, green land. And Lin, I'll leave the spirit fish clan ones here. Tina pointed to a spacious piece of land near the ocean. And Lin took a glance at it and nodded. A ball of light, exuding extremely powerful energy fluctuations, was released from Tina's hand. And Lin could sense this familiar life force fluctuations, and he thought back to the 9 balls of light that he had encountered in Qilu City. This ball of light was most likely one of them. Whoosh! The ball of light seemed to have exploded, and an extremely powerful life force energy enshrouded heaven and earth before condensing together. At this moment, Tina was the goddess of creation. Holy light lit up the entire world, and she pointed a finger at an empty space in the air. Over 1,000 translucent, snowy white eggs that contained boundless possibilities of life appeared there. And Lin felt like he knew the answer to the question of which came first, the chicken or the egg, at least in this world. Whoosh! Another burst of extremely powerful life force fluctuations swept forth. A lithe and graceful woman with a red fishtail appeared before Tina and Lin. Hong Yuji, I'll leave these first-generation spirit fish clan members to you. Tina's words were like a decree from the heavens. The mermaid was not displeased in the slightest. Instead, she bowed her head and spoke in a gentle voice. Hong Yu will do her best to nurture our tribe so that we can flourish here. Lin knew who this woman was. She was most likely the return to Void Stage mighty figure that the 2 red-robed elderly men had sacrificed to the fragment of the realm core. He couldn't help but remark, isn't this a little too unnatural? It doesn't reflect the spirit of a tribe that is striving to survive in an unfamiliar world. Tina blinked her emerald eyes, and she nodded in agreement. How about this? You could become a statue for now, and you can only come out when your tribe is in danger. Hong Yuji. Thus, Hong Yuji was transformed into a stone statue by Tina, and she stood at the center of over 1,000 spirit fish eggs. The word spirit fish patriarch had been carved into the statue. When the baby spirit fish were born, they would definitely treat her as a god of creation, the mother of all spirit fish. Perhaps many years later, she would be worshipped by countless spirit fish. Chapter 625. And Lin felt that the so-called gods did not seem to be that big of a deal. After all, there was a woman who could be said to be a supreme deity by his side. She was still his pet beast. The more he thought about it, the more pressure he felt. Tina was already so awesome, but her master was still so lazy. What should he do? And Lin also knew that this was incomparable. Even if he worked hard for another 10,000 years, it would be impossible for him to reach the level of the god of creation. That was not something that could be achieved by relying on talent and strength alone. It required a great opportunity. He thought about it for a moment and completely let it go. He hugged Tina's leg and shouted, "Let's go." Tina led him to another beach on the continent and released over 1,000 heavenly turtle eggs. She also summoned the return to Void Stage mighty figure, Priest Gay 1, and transformed him into a statue that wouldn't appear unless he was in dire straits. Next up seems to be the dragon race. Should we release them into the sea? Build a house in the sea for them? What kind of houses do they like? Ah, so troublesome, Tina grumbled. There's no need to build a house. Just build a basin for them, and Lynn suggested. Just like that, the birthplace of the dragon clan, an extremely simple and crude pit appeared under Lynn's suggestion. The statue of the dragon tribe's patriarch was a return to Void stage mighty figure by the name of Ao Chun. We've arrived at the stone tribe. This is a rock golem, and I found a good place as well, Tina said with a wide grin. The stone tribe had one as well, and Lynn's heart stirred slightly. Why were all these races so familiar? There were no duplicates, and, little Na, let me ask you, which mighty figures are the remaining life orbs? Their holy leader Feng Yu of the Stone Tribe, Flower Night Queen of the Darkwing Tribe, Holy Monarch Wu Zhe of the Holy Martial Clan, Dream Spirit Snake of the Snake Spirit Clan, Sword Sparrow Immortal of the Vermilion Bird Tribe, and Poison Demon God of the True Demon Tribe. What is it, Jinan? Tina asked curiously. As expected, and Lin frowned deeply. Is it a coincidence? Why did it have to be 9 of the 10 Realm Guardian races? What's the 10 Realm Guardian tribes? Tina was confused, and Lin didn't try to hide anything and explained everything that had happened in the Shouyang tomb to Tina. Tina's eyes widened upon hearing this. My God, what a coincidence! But why are there no Void Spirit Tribe living beings? And Lin rubbed the space between his eyebrows. How would I know? It can't be that we interrupted him before he finished, right? Ah, Tina was enraged. Now that you mention it, I really want to capture a Void Spirit Tribe mighty figure. It's killing my obsessive-compulsive disorder. And Lin was speechless at the sight of Tina acting like a little girl. After waiting for her to calm down, the two of them set off again. They found a place filled with stone peaks and released over 1,000 stone tribe eggs. Immediately afterward, Tina constructed another floating island and placed over 1,000 dark-winged tribe eggs upon it. And Lin was a little confused. Aren't the dark-winged tribe mammals? They were probably born directly from their mother's womb, right? Why do we have to use eggs? Tina smiled. This egg of mine can be used to nurture and protect the womb. I can set it to nurture the next generation in place of the mother. Of course, the next generation will be nurtured by the mother herself. What else could Lin say? Tina was someone who dared to do what she wanted. She truly did whatever she wanted. After that, they found a spirit lake and left the snake spirit tribe eggs there. They found a tall mountain enshrouded in clouds and mist and left the holy martial tribe eggs there. In the south, they placed the vermilion bird tribe eggs there. There were massive trees everywhere. In the west, they placed the true demon tribe eggs on a black continent that was rife with mutant beasts. All right, it's all up to them now. Tina clapped her hands with excitement and anticipation on her face. Don't get wiped out by the dinosaurs, and Lin teased. Umph. Tina pouted in an extremely adorable manner. I'm here. If I say they won't be wiped out, then they won't be wiped out. And Lin's lips twitched. You really are a god of creation. I don't need to put on a show. Tina laughed heartily before snapping her fingers. The flow of time accelerated again. Let's see how they develop. 9 different images appeared in the air as she spoke, allowing Lin to observe the 9 different tribes at the same time. Soon, the first batch of highly intelligent creatures in this world hatched and finally broke out of their shells. And Lin looked at the 9 tribes in their infant states. The most adorable tribe was the Vermilion Bird tribe. The newborn Vermilion birds had white, fluffy feathers, and they looked like balls of cotton. There were also faint golden flames enshrouding their bodies, and their round eyes were extremely bright and mesmerizing, giving onlookers the urge to hold them in their hands. These so-called vermilion birds weren't actually vermilion birds. Instead, they were just birds that possessed the vermilion bird bloodline. And Lin didn't know how much vermilion bird bloodline the Vermilion Bird tribe had left on the Tai Chu continent. However, the Vermilion Bird clan being born in this world, when he saw the pure and holy flames, he knew that this was a Vermilion Bird clan with an extremely pure bloodline. By the way, Jine and Lin, what do the Vermilion Bird tribe usually eat? Tina asked. I don't really know, but birds usually eat insects, right? Haven't you heard of the saying, the early bird gets the worm? And Lynn hesitated momentarily before replying. Tina clapped her hands together, and her eyes lit up. That makes sense. Thus, the newborn vermilion birds that ate the flames of heaven and earth were forced to eat the insects gifted to them by the mighty God of creation. As mentioned before, the most adorable vermilion birds were the vermilion birds. As such, the dragon tribe was undoubtedly the ugliest of the bunch. The newborn dragon tribe living beings didn't even have scales, and their tiny bodies squirmed in the water like thick earthworms. Even Tina was feeling a little disdainful upon seeing this. Thus, Tina and Lynn teleported to the vermilion bird tribe's base camp. This was a massive bird's nest on a massive tree with many adorable vermilion bird babies resting on it. The two of them held up one baby each, and they played with them with curiosity and elation. And Lynn gently stroked the head of one of the baby vermilion birds. The golden flames on its body didn't burn his hand, but it was a little warm. Chirp, chirp, chirp. The baby vermilion bird chirped nervously. Hey, you shouldn't be stroking them like that. You should be doing what I'm doing. Tina's voice suddenly sounded, and Lynn turned to find Tina stroking the baby vermilion bird in a certain direction with a certain amount of force. The baby vermilion bird's eyes narrowed in bliss as it chirped with a hint of elation. Tina also smiled. An exquisitely beautiful woman in a white dress, stroking an adorable vermilion bird, was such a harmonious and beautiful scene that even Lynn couldn't help but admire it. Elves were the most proficient beings among all living beings, so Lynn wasn't surprised that she was able to do this. However, he sighed with emotion. When the baby vermilion bird was born, it had been hugged by the big boss of this world. He could probably brag about this for the rest of his life. As for the dragon tribe, stop messing around. Who would like to hug an earthworm? Just let them soak in the water.